Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Stig Abell. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC.
Thank you for your company. Stig Abell here this Sunday afternoon on LBC. We will keep you up to date with what is going on in our political system. It's self-immolation over the next few hours. Labour shadow cabinets are falling like nine pins. We have no Prime Minister. Nicola Sturgeon is on manoeuvres in Scotland, Sinn Féin in Ireland. Britain has voted for Brexit, and chaos, politically speaking, has ensued. So let's focus on three things. At 5 p.m, what does this say about our country? What does a post-Brexit Britain look like now? Is it a nation that tolerates nationalism and hostility, for example? At 4, how would you feel if we didn't actually leave now? But first, who is actually running the country? And what faith do you have in our politicians to handle this properly? Deep breath, everybody. It's been an interesting few hours. For those keeping score of what we are now facing politically as a country, the Prime Minister has resigned. The Chancellor has gone missing. Do call in if you spot him anywhere, his little pale face as he wanders about the streets thinking about what might have been. Shadow cabinet members are calling for Corbyn to resign. A coup is underway, but they're resigning themselves. 8 at last count, although Ben was fired by Corbyn last night. I've been talking for about 30 seconds, so more could have gone in the interim. Nicola Sturgeon is on manoeuvres for another Scottish referendum. Sinn Féin for a united Ireland. The leaders of the Leave movement are, as follows, 2 former journalists, Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, who are clearly terrified about what they are now having to do. A sweaty demagogue in Nigel Farage, who's out of the picture entirely, non-elected politician. Dan Hannan, an MEP who is soon to be out of a job and has announced he's taking a month off social media to recuperate after a campaign. Britain is in utter chaos, politically speaking, and I want to hear from you about whether you have faith in our politicians to sort this out. Look at Boris Johnson playing cricket yesterday like in the final days of the Raj, lustily swinging the willow while the country burns around him. But don't worry, there's Michael Gove, who writes beautifully and can knock you out a Times leader in minutes, but probably can't do numbers or statesmanship. Do you think they know how to unpick 40 years of bureaucracy, trade deals, security deals, economic deals, military deals, with a vast superstructure that now despises us? And there's more than a nagging suspicion, isn't there, that the work on this process hasn't been started or planned by anybody. This government of essay crisis, trusting to the sort of glib, self-assured entitlement that characterises the moneyed elite generally, didn't think this was going to happen. They didn't think you'd vote out, so they didn't do anything. And now we are left with Johnson, Gove and Farage. I mean, Boris Johnson can quip in Latin, he can turn a good phrase, but do you feel confident in his ability to oversee the most complicated governmental task since the Restoration? And of course, the opposition, who might reasonably be expected to hold the government to account, is run by a man who wanted to leave but pretended he didn't, and potentially sabotaged the Remain movement. That's Jeremy Corbyn, ladies and gentlemen, who is despised by his own MPs, but loved by a group of young idealists who dominate their Labour membership, who can rely on those people to back him, even as all his own MPs try to chuck him out of the window. So he could cling on, a hostage to his own popularity, but utterly unable to fulfil his duty as opposition leader. Who's going to sort this mess out, and how much faith do you have in our political class? Because our referendum, in the end, was it not, was basically a vote against politicians. But now we've got to rely on the political establishment to somehow make it work. Does that sound likely to you? 0345 6060 973. Has Brexit broken British politics? Is that a good thing? And who is going to do what is necessary for this nation over the coming months? Who have you got faith in? How much faith do you have left? Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Alex Salmond and asked him if he felt that the United Kingdom was indeed in terminal political chaos, and who actually was running this country.
Well, Nicola Sturgeon is running the country, that's pretty obvious. And I mean, she's the only politician over these last 3 days who's been speaking with clarity, consideration, and has obviously worked out a plan. I mean, Cameron's gone, Corbyn's going, the Chancellor's in hiding, or maybe he's been kidnapped and nobody will pay the ransom. Well, whatever it is, he's nowhere to be seen. And the rest of them are running about like headless chickens. But Nicola Sturgeon is the opposite of that, total calm authority, telling people how it is in Scotland, what she's going to do, and that's why people have confidence in her. and no confidence in the Westminster establishment.
And she's saying that the Scottish Parliament is going to veto the result of the referendum, effectively, isn't she?
No, what she's saying is that in order to bring effect to these considerations in Scotland, the UK government would have to get a legislative consent motion through the Scottish Parliament, and she's unwilling to give them a carte blanche. She's quite right. She's speaking for the 62% of people in Scotland who voted to remain within the European Union.
And that refusal to allow a letter of consent to go through amounts, in your view, to a clear veto. So if the British government says, we are starting the process now, we want Scotland to be on board with that, it is in the gift of the Scottish Parliament to say, no, we are not taking part in that, and therefore we are saying, no, it cannot happen.
Yes, and that covers Scotland. I mean, it's easy enough for the UK government to ring-fence things so they can go ahead with everyone else if that's what they're choosing to do. But, you know, we're not going to facilitate the process of moving out of Europe against the will of the Scottish people. And it has to be said, you know, there's plenty of people signing the petition. I think it's reached 3.5 million. You know, people will say, "Well, wait a minute, did we think about this properly?" Now, my own opinion.
They should have voted. They should have voted in the referendum, shouldn't they, Alex? Instead of signing the petition.
And you should have waited to the second half of my sentence. My own opinion is that parliamentarians from England have got no choice but to follow the will of the people of England. No choice whatsoever, because they voted for a referendum. But in Scotland, we're faced with having a government we didn't elect, having a referendum we didn't want, now proposing to drag Scotland out of Europe against the will of the Scottish people. You can understand why we're a tad upset.
Oh, I can, but is the thing that therefore follows, Alex, a referendum in Scotland to leave the United Kingdom? It must do from what you're saying, isn't it?
I think, as Nicola Sturgeon said, it's both on the table and it's now highly likely. Now, because I've got considerable faith in Nicola Sturgeon's negotiating abilities, I'm quite certain that every possible avenue will be explored to bring the wishes of the Scottish people into effect, every possible avenue. And I'm certain that she'll carry that forward as Westminster continues in its black hole of chaos over the next few months. So you'll get a very considered response from Scotland, negotiating with the European leaders, negotiating with the variety of interests in Scotland and in the UK, negotiating with the Mayor of London, who's obviously got key concerns about what's happening to the financial sector at the present moment, and trying to bring calm out of this chaos in which the Westminster establishment has left this country. Finally,
I suppose, on that, or maybe this is slightly broader than that. Has this referendum left the country in hock to nationalism? You have Scottish nationalism, which expresses itself very clearly and in a pro-European fashion. You've got English nationalism, which expresses itself very clearly in an anti-European sentiment. Meanwhile, there's this horrible threat, or for some people a horrible threat, of a united Ireland, the Irish nationalism rising again. Is the political scene in the United Kingdom now one based on nationalism, do you think?
Well, it depends on the how people express themselves. I mean, in Scotland, the case for Scottish nationhood, nationalism is progressive. It is one which carries the support of people from all ethnic backgrounds. It's inclusive. It's pro-immigration. It wants more people to come to Scotland. It's outward-looking. It wants to be part of Europe. In Ireland, of course, it's a campaign for Irish unity, which has been going on for many hundreds of years. In England, it does seem to have been tapped as a very frustrated, a very angry call from people who feel they've been left behind by the political establishment and not cared about. But I think one thing that politicians should be doing, as well as Nicola Sturgeon providing the leadership to take the country forward, is finding a way to hold the country together. And I don't mean by that holding Ireland and Scotland against the will of the people being governed from London. I'm talking about holding the communities of the country together. Fundamentally more important actually than political parties. It's to hold the communities together and make sure that everybody knows that their government and their political representatives are acting in their best interests and are not ignoring them or leaving them behind or making them feel frustrated or isolated or in some cases, of course, threatened. and that's really important right now.
And let's talk about those political leaders for a second. Did you, when you looked into the eyes of Michael Gove and Boris Johnson as they gave their funereal victory speech on Friday, did they look to you like people who have a plan, who know what the next steps are for the next 2 years to take us out of the European Union? Or do you look at them and think they have no clue about what happens next?
Well, I think everybody. But what came to my mind was that Robert Redford film, The Candidate. For people familiar with it, Redford wins the senatorial race in California and looks at his campaign manager and says, "What on earth do I do now?"
It reminded me, Alex, of the end of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where they look out the window, the entire Bolivian army is waiting for them. Because I don't think they know. I don't think. I mean, these are people who pursued an idea. And they pursued it as journalists, potentially, didn't they? And now they have to deal with the statesmen. Are they the statesmen, in your opinion, to handle the political vagaries that will now follow?
Yeah, I was saying Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, more like Pinky and Perky, I would have thought. But they certainly didn't look like they were people who were in control of events. No, I suspect people who expected to win. I think the problem with Boris's calculation, I think Boris's calculation was based on a narrow defeat and a passport to the Tory leadership, as opposed to a narrow victory and having to deal with the consequences. And of course, Cameron has handed them the poison chalice. Cameron's leaving speech, I'm off, and
good luck.
Somebody else is going to have to deal with this. Good luck to you. I mean, it's the sort of constitutional equivalent of there's no money left in the Treasury. There's no political capital left in Downing Street. Over to you, Boris. Let's see how you got on with it. So I think the dawning realisation on Michael Gove and Boris Johnson that if you break something, then you own it, is the problem, and explains the funereal press conference.
Do you buy, Alex, the idea that until we actually instigate this Article 50, we are still members of the European Union? Do you think there's a plausible?
Yes,
do you think there's a plausible scenario potentially driven out of Scotland, which via a general election would mean that we end up not leaving the European Union? Do you think there's a plausible series of events that keep us in the European Union despite the referendum?
Well, the only way you can reverse a referendum result, which a parliament has voted for, against my wishes instead, I voted against this referendum. But the only way you can do that is if there's a significant material change in circumstances, right? And you can't just say, as some people want parliamentarians, and I saw a couple of Labour MPs say, we'll just ignore the verdict of the people. You can't do that. But if there was a significant change of circumstances, and whatever that might be, a general election is one conceivable argument. If you had a general election and a party was returned saying, no, we're not going to go ahead with this, then that is a material change in circumstances, because it could only be there if they're elected by the people. But I don't actually see that happening.
You don't see a general election happening?
No, I can see a general election happening. I don't see a party winning on a platform of saying, well, listen, we're going to reverse the referendum result. I'm talking about here in England.
Yeah.
I would have thought that they'll run into a lot of problems. Mind you, this whole business that the UK is in at the present moment, the conflation of the political system, the disintegration of disarray, the end of the Prime Minister, the end of the opposition leader probably, all of this was unnecessary. Yeah. And even with people who wanted to leave the European Union, the difficulty, of course, was that if the anti-European Union side had put forward, look, we're going for Norway, we're going for Switzerland, we're going to the European Economic Area or EFTA, none of this dislocation would have happened. The problem, of course, was that they founded their campaign not against the European Union. They founded their campaign effectively against immigration. And the difficulty with having a solution which would allow the economy to continue without too much hassle, as it would have in the EEA, is that it would have meant a free movement of people, which would have been against the nature of the campaign they'd be fighting. So effectively, we're left with this chaos and the potential now of a significant economic downside because of the poisonous nature of the political campaign of the two guys, that's Johnston and Gove, who look so depressed at their victory press conference.
Do you think that until Donald Trump gets elected in November, we are the embarrassing cousin of the political system? Do you think people from outside of this country, this nation, are looking at us going, I can't believe Britain, the mother of parliaments, a place of order and certainty, has done this to themselves?
I think actually the probably this is bad news for Trump, is it not? The American electorate notoriously don't pay all that much attention to what's happening overseas, but anything they do see about this, I would have thought. I'm laughing. I'm just looking at a picture on the television of Mr. Watson at Glastonbury.
I know. Basically, we now have a political system now, Alex, where we're waiting to hear from the deputy leader of the opposition after his train gets in from Glastonbury. Is this not bordering on farce?
Well, it is bordering on farce. So if any Americans are looking at it, that'll probably do some damage to Mr. Trump's prospects. That might be a silver lining in all this chaos. But yeah, I mean, as I say, you can't imagine. Well, maybe you can imagine. Maybe you can see the contrast between what people in Scotland are being offered, which is calm, clear authority of somebody from Nicola Sturgeon's cabinet who've worked out what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they have to do. It's not a circumstance they wanted to happen, but nonetheless dealing with the circumstances as they arise and having a plan to go forward. And the total disarray and chaos which has enveloped Westminster. I mean, it's a total day and night contrast.
It's Alex Salmond there, understandably from his point of view, trying to talk up what he believes to be the leadership shown by Nicola Sturgeon. Over to you, really. Do you think this is chaos? See, to my mind, and after the travel, I'll let you know how I voted. I voted for the first time in my life the other day. I believe we've got to abide by the will of the people. I'll talk a bit about that. But have we been left in chaos in terms of, do you think the politicians that are left have it in them to do this properly? That's the question I'm interested in. Do you have faith in Johnson and Gove and Farage and Hannan and whoever else might be there? Do you believe in them? Are they going to see us right? Because they promised a lot, didn't they? Are they going to look after us? Do you have the faith? 0345 6060 973, text 84850, tweet at LBC. This is Stig Abell telling you, after the travel, how I voted on LBC. It's 3:19. It's probably the biggest story that I can remember. And the question I'm asking you is, do you feel confident that the politicians in place have a plan to get us out of the European Union? Now, I've never voted before, largely because I never felt sufficiently engaged by any party or group of people to believe in. I didn't believe in anything, really. I didn't believe in Tories or Labour. I also moved around a lot in London, so I never really had any loyalty to a local area. But I did vote in this election because it was a one vote meant something. I didn't vote with a massive amount of passion. I inclined to remain just at the end because I was worried about the promises being made by the Leave lot. I thought they needed to run a perfect campaign to convince us of this. And I didn't think they did. But they evidently did. They convinced 52% of those who voted. And I'm not one of these people who then objects to that. That's democracy. We decided to have this referendum. We made it a straightforward one. And the vote is the vote. I'm not bothered about that. As a nation, we have to be great enough to make it work. The question I ask you now is, do you feel we are that nation? And do you feel our political leaders are those political leaders? I look at Gove and I look at Johnson and I see chances. I see people who got excited by an idea. They got excited by their own rhetoric. They thought it was a jolly wheeze to pursue this stuff. They didn't think, here's what we're going to do on day one. Here's what we're going to do on day 100. Here is the logistical plan to extricate ourselves from a 40-year relationship with a giant superstate. And that's what worries me now. Not that Britain decided to vote out. That's what, if you ask people their opinion, they tell you their opinion. You shrug your shoulders. That's our country. Do you have faith, these people representing you, Gove, Johnson, Farage, Hannan, all the people who've been given this mandate, have a first beginnings of a clue of what happens next? 0345 6060 973. Sally's on the line from Kingston. Hi, Sally.
Good afternoon. I'm pretty appalled by some of the behaviour of the MPs, David Lammy, Sadiq Khan. They're talking about going against a democracy, against a decision that the British public have made. And as for this petition online, I mean, how can we possibly trust people? How many times are they voting? Are they able to vote? Where are they from? Are they voting from Europe? Where are they voting from? I think we should invoke the article now. And also, we should put Theresa May in just now. I mean, what Prime Minister gives 3 months' notice? I mean, hey,
well, he would argue. I mean, he's in an impossible position, arguably, Sally, because he would argue that by giving 3 months' notice, he's given enough stability to enable there to be a transition. But do you think Theresa May voted out? Voted in, rather. She voted in. She wanted to stay.
Yeah, I know, but interim. until a leader, and see how she conducts herself. She knows the EU. She's highly respected by both sides anyway, and I just think it would, one of the whole reason that this all started off was Nigel Farage and UKIP, and that's the reason that David Cameron gave a vote, and it's the reason that lots and lots of Labour voters moved away and voted UKIP, and I think that he's been given a very bad press anyway, all the time, and I think some of it's unjustified, and that he should be given a chance to be included. He's an expert on the EU.
Who's this? Who are we talking about here?
Nigel Farage.
You think he should be allowed to? But he's not elected. He's not an elected politician.
I know. I think we need business people. We need people like Nigel Farage. We need MEPs. We need, listen, Britain needs to be talked up now, not talked down by all these people. I mean, imagine David Lammy saying that, he's going to get Parliament to vote against, what the British people want.
There'd be a revolution, wouldn't there, if that happened?
Well, I just think, his parents were given an opportunity here in this country with a democracy, and he's benefited from it as well and done well, and he's in our Parliament. And to say that, I'm absolutely shocked.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing about. Yeah, it's a very fair point from Sally. But do you feel that we have the people capable of doing this? Because I think they didn't think they were going to win, and they didn't really think about the consequences of winning, and therefore we're now left in this position where we're going to have to try and make it work. Do you think Johnson and Gove can do that? Do you have faith in that? I don't know. I'm not sure I have. Lucy's on the line from St John Woods. Hi, Lucy.
Oh, hi there. I just want to say, David Cameron said he wasn't going to jump ship. He's jumped ship and said, he loves this country. Why has he started off all this chaos, which is totally wrong. And, why don't they just in the meantime put George Osborne in? At least it'll give him a chance to be...
Well, have you seen George Osborne, Lucy? I mean, I'm looking under the table now for him. I've not seen him at any point in the last 3 days. He and Cameron got us into this. They should be everywhere, shouldn't they, saying, this is what we've done, this is the planning we've had, these are the steps they're going to take.
Yeah. Yeah, not step away from it, and absolve, absolutely ridiculous.
So how do you feel, though? How did you vote, Lucy?
Remain, stay,
Yeah,
but, the will of the people, you can't overturn democracy. And that David Lammy, I mean, he's just done something to his career now, absolutely ridiculous. And the other thing is I totally support Jeremy Corbyn. He ordinary people trust him. He could hopefully be the person to solve the Palestinian and Israeli, crisis.
You're joking, aren't you?
Really be the broker. What?
You're joking, aren't you?
I'm not joking. No. I think
you think Jeremy Corbyn could solve the Israeli-Palestinian situation?
Not solve it, but help to solve it. Bring people together. I'm sure he could be a peace broker. Yeah.
He's going to be kicked out. He's going to be kicked out as leader, isn't he? Half the shadow cabinet have resigned.
No, they're Blairites trying to get rid of him. The ordinary people would rather trust somebody like Jeremy Corbyn than those lot that are in there. They don't want them. They want somebody who they feel, like a sort of friend that you could trust.
Yeah, well, Lisa, I don't agree with you, but it's interesting you feel that today. You feel that Corbyn, who, basically, if he'd have had any desire to stay in the EU, would he not have convinced all of those idealistic people, all of those young people that voted for him, would he not have convinced them to come out and vote for this?
No, because look...
He didn't want it, though, did he?
Yeah, but it was 50-50, and it shows he was more on track with his sort of, thinking than
you've swallowed some spin there, I think, Lucy. I think the notion that he's...
I don't think so.
He's not more in track. Do you think...
Osborne? What?
What did you say about Osborne?
Yeah, do you think George Osborne should be given the chance just to steer... Or I think David Cameron should come back and just sort out the mess. He started all this total chaos.
Well, Lucy, you and I are in total agreement about that. David Cameron walked away from a car crash on Friday morning, and he's basically said to Boris and Gove, go on then, sons, have a go. I don't think they've got a plan. And I'm interested in your view of politicians now, because this was a referendum against politicians, wasn't it? It was against the establishment. Well, all those people who voted leave to stick it to the establishment, you're going to get an old Etonian, Boris Johnson, trying to make this work. If you're anti-establishment and you voted leave, are you happy about that? Are you happy with what's going to happen? Whether you voted leave or remain, like I said, I voted remain just, but I'm totally happy with the will of the people voting for leave. The question is a practical one. Can we get out of the EU with good sense and reason with these people in charge? 03456060973, text 84850, tweet at LBC. Lucy there thought that Jeremy Corbyn is such a strong figure he could solve the Israeli-Palestinian crisis. Just so you know, 8 shadow cabinet ministers have gone in the last 24 hours. We'll keep you up to date with what happens to Jeremy Corbyn. He may decide on Monday morning he's had enough and he's walking away from the Labour Party. We shall see. I want to hear your views on the political establishment as it stands this afternoon, this Sunday afternoon, in a historic weekend for this nation. Call me on 03456060973. It's news time now. Stig Abell here, the Sunday afternoon on LBC. 8 shadow cabinet ministers have either resigned or Nigel Benn was fired last night. So 8 have gone and Corbyn is reeling, although, interestingly enough, his support is not in the Parliamentary Labour Party, it's in the membership. So they could want him to stay, the Parliamentary Party could want him to go, and a standoff could ensue. So we have Labour wobbling. David Cameron has resigned. Has anyone seen George Osborne? If you see him in the street, call in. I'd love to know what he's doing, because he's not the Chancellor of the Exchequer calming us down and saying, here is my plan for the next 3 months before a new leadership comes in. He's scarpered. And I want to know whether you feel faith in what we've been left with, because the nation has voted. We're going to leave the European Union, aren't we? Do we believe in our leaders to make that happen? Do you look at Michael Gove and Boris Johnson and think they can do that? Or are they, this is my theory, they're chancellors who followed an ideal. They followed an idea. They followed a wheeze. They thought it was fun. They thought it was revolutionary. And now they're confronted with unpicking 40 years of trade relationships and other relationships. Are they capable of doing that? Do you have faith? Whether you believed in leave or you believed in remain, we are where we are. I'm very happy that Britain can come through this. But I look at Gove and I look at Johnson and I look at Farage and Dan Hannan and that whole crowd, and I've got to believe, haven't I, and haven't you, they can do it. Jeremy Corbyn, where's he going to be? Half his shadow cabinet hate him and they're leaving. Who in the political establishment is going to make this work? 03456060973, text 84850. Derek from South Wales said, I've never had any faith in our politicians and want to say if Corbyn had any principles, he would resign like the Labour politicians who are doing, but he hasn't got any, so he won't. And Kate from Kingston says, I think Cameron should reconsider his resignation and serve out his full term. He walked away from the car crash on Friday morning, and it's a car crash he created. Meanwhile, Johnson and Gove wait in the wings. How do you feel about that? Yvonne's on the line from Enfield. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, I know where George Osborne is. I think there was a punch-up in Downing Street and he's got a black eye. I can't believe this man has disappeared. Yeah. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. How can you disappear?
Don't you think do you think he's got some frozen peas on his eye at the minute and just sort of under a table somewhere?
I think there was a punch-up at Downing Street. Anyway, regardless, let's leave his eye to heal with some steak. But Corbyn is the man who hasn't insulted anyone at the EU, like Boris and the others. And if we want someone to get us a good deal, we need someone who's calm and collected. He has been in government for a length of time, so I'm sure surely we're not saying that this man is not capable of at least getting us out of this mess.
You saying Corbyn's been in government?
Let me tell you something.
Go on.
He turned round the tax credit. He turned round the disabled. No one gives him credit for that, for the disabled as well. He turns around those U-turns. Okay?
You can't believe it. You can't believe that at the minute.
Why can't I?
Well, at the minute, Corbyn is standing on a platform that is on fire. There is going to be a motion to unseat him as the leader of the Labour Party.
Let me tell you something. Before Corbyn came into government, the Labour people were leaving in their droves because they did not feel supported by the very government that they thought was there for them. And it's because these people had egos. When he came in, they walked out. What kind of politician throws their things out the pan because someone's elected that they don't like? And we're talking about Yvette Cooper as well.
Yeah.
Where was the support? Where was the support for Syria? They were warmongering there. Warmongering. We didn't want that. We didn't want people getting killed in Syria. At the end of the day, this man is calm and collected. And what he did was statesmanlike. He didn't get involved in all the hate speeches of both the Remain and the...
Because he didn't want us to remain, Yvonne. No, he wanted to leave.
Because what he did was he gave us the pros and the cons, and he let us decide. It's a democracy. I voted Remain. I wasn't going to vote. But you know what? it's a democracy. We have to go forward now.
Yvonne, you and I are the same. We did the same thing. But my point is, if you're hoping that Jeremy Corbyn, at the moment he's being unseated by his own party, is the solution to negotiate us out of the EU, you're living in a fantasy world, Yvonne. That's never going to happen.
It's not fantasy world. It's fantasy world in your world because you're used to writing the fantasy. Let's deal with the reality. We've got a Conservative Party with two people that fought for the out campaign who haven't even got a plan.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Haven't got a plan.
I agree with you.
Boris is funny. Boris is ha 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 ha. We'll vote for him. Yes, vote for him, and you'll see we'll be on to the next mess. Give the man a chance. The man is very responsible. He thinks calmly and collectively. He doesn't do things for show. And I said this about David Cameron when I first started listening to LBC. The man's a nincompoop. He does things off the booth. He doesn't think forward. He doesn't ever think about the next step. He does it all the time. And I said he will have a great fall. And look what's happened. He's left without a plan. He was offering us the Rolls Royce. This is Farage as well. Offering the Rolls Royce, all shiny new, but no engine underneath the bonnet. Carry on. Vote for those people. Give the man a chance. He needs to have people around him that support him. Let these people go, these Brexiteers. Go! I will even pay your flight for you. Go! We've been waiting for you. Single fare. Away.
Yvonne, just to be absolutely clear, though, you think that the people who led the campaign to get us out, who've been endorsed by the population, shouldn't be in charge of dealing with the negotiation to get us out?
Oh, well, they're doing a good job of dealing with it now, aren't they?
Well, they're not showing anything. But it's only 3 days.
This is why. Let me tell you why people are unhappy in this country. Everyone keeps talking about the health service. Yeah. We've got Farage telling people they have to have insurance for health service. They haven't even got disposable income. Okay. And then you have the Financial Services Conduct Authority, who are supposed to watch over the financial institution. They are paid by the very people who we complain about, and we get a little £50 when we make a complaint, and they carry on as before. The local ombudsman, who deals with local authorities. They fob you off.
Okay.
The justice system is a corporate making venture. That man, Chris Gregnon, took away legal aid.
Okay.
These people completely, absolutely destroy justice in this country.
But you're not related to Corbyn, are you?
No, but I would like to become an MP and bring some reality back into.
Well, Yvonne, you speak very well, and look, you and I agree on a lot. I agree. Where is Cameron? Where is Osborne? They got us into this mess. You and I agree, Yvonne, on that. If Yvonne's solution is Jeremy Corbyn should lead the negotiation for staying in the EU at the time when his party is trying to kick him out. Is that what we've got to? I mean, look, we're living in a world of kind of fantasy politics. Boris Johnson and Michael Gove are the two most powerful men in the country, aren't they? Do you think they'll see us right in this negotiation? Do you have faith that whatever you voted, the will of the people has come forward? Now is the time to trust Johnson and Gove. Is that ridiculous or not? 03456060973. Text 84850. Brian's on the line from Harringay. Hi, Brian.
Hi, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. What's your view? You're not going to say Corbyn's the solution to this, are you?
Oh, absolutely not. No. As well, I mean, he's not in government, and he may not last the day. But since things have come up about where the Chancellor is, I think we actually need to be quite worried about the man's mental health. And I'm not joking. I think that basically he's probably entered a fit of depression right now and is hiding, and maybe he needs to be cared for. So won't labour on that. But basically, he's being handed a financial nightmare, an economic nightmare, which he's going to have to deal with, or again step aside, and we're lacking stability. What I'd also like to say is Boris Johnson. There's been moves I've seen on campaigns with people on the left looking to join the Tory party so they can somehow stop him becoming a leader, and the Conservatives actually rallying to try and stop him becoming leader. We need to do exactly the opposite. We need to make him leader. He decided to play a game, and these people and the public, the people who voted, the 17 million people who voted, many of them thinking we would vote Remain and that their vote would be somehow a protest. Everybody needs to understand this is not a game. We're playing with economy, we're playing with jobs.
It's past that point, though, isn't it, Brian? We've made the decision.
Well, you know what? This is another point. First off, I'll finish the point on Boris Johnson, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson needs to go in so that we can all see what an awful job the fact that these guys who said that they wanted to take control, we are now not in control. They are not in control. Strangely, you saw the leaders of the Brexit campaign, like Liam Fox, saying that David Cameron should stay in power so that, he could manage he deals with all the rubbish. I mean, frankly, that's ridiculous for the guys who are saying that they want to take control. Boris wanted control. Get him in control. He'll be out in a few months whilst everybody realises. And then we never have to see him ever again. If somehow he's allowed to sit on the sidelines and snipe at Theresa May, who's having to deal with the mess, then he has a political life going on. If he goes in 3 months, we will all have confirmed all our fears, and he'll be gone. Hopefully, before Article 50 is triggered.
Well, that's the point, though. This is what we get to. Everyone said Article 50 would be triggered straight away. It's clear that is not going to happen. No one is going to trigger Article 50.
Oh, my God. These guys then suddenly, let's do it. Let's get out all this emergency. The EU is such a big threat. Oh, but we don't mean it. Not right now. However, we do have this argument about whether Parliament can actually somehow overturn the referendum results so that Article 50 isn't triggered.
Well, funny enough, Brian mentions that after 4 o'clock, I'm going to be opening up the floodgates to ask, can you conceive of this Brexit vote not actually being meaningful? Can you conceive of us not actually going through with it? Or will there be revolution? Can you believe that this referendum won't have an impact? I don't believe that. I believe the referendum must stand. The people have voted. It doesn't matter who agrees and disagrees with it. The question I'm asking you until that point, though, is, do you trust these guys to do it for us? 03456060973, and I don't. I'm worried about that. I'm not worried about Britain speaking. I'm worried about Britain's representatives now not having either the ability or the planning or the skills to do something about it. So we'll hear from you, 03456060973. We're also going to be bringing you political updates throughout this show from lots of the nation's finest journalists as we try and pick through the rubble of what remains of our political system, what's going on with Corbyn, what's going on with the Tories, what's going on with Scotland, with Ireland. We are wandering through the rubble of a political system. You may believe that the future is beautiful. The future is going to be successful. At the minute, our political institutions are collapsing. And after the travel, we'll speak to Tom McCaig, who wrote about how David Cameron all but begged Jeremy Corbyn to stand with him on the Remain trail, and he did not. These are the people who are going to be governing our future as we try and do one of the most complicated constitutional things a government can ever do, get out of a deal with a giant European superstate. Confident? 03456060973. I'm Stig Abell. This is LBC. It is
Stig Abell on LBC.
How much faith do you have in the political system to get us through these next few months? Tom has texted on 84850. Cameron's acting like a spoilt child and now won't play anymore because he's lost. He promised this referendum he should man up and lead the country through the process of leaving. Him and his like are all caught up in the London bubble and have just realised that there are opinions that matter beyond Watford. Scotland voted to stay part of the UK and as such should accept the democratically arrived decision. Northern Ireland will never go it alone. The nationalists will never agree to being part of the United States of Ireland. So what Tom is effectively saying, the people have spoken, and Cameron's job is to listen. But he's already rejected that. I totally agree. I think it's an act of craven cowardice on Cameron's part to walk away in the way he did. Others disagree. I've heard people say to me he had to do this. He had to allow there to be a chance for other people to take this forward. Or has he thrown the biggest hospital pass of his career to Johnson and Gove? Alex Salmond earlier said it was the equivalent of that note from the Labour government saying there is no more money. It's just saying to Boris, good luck. My view is, can you trust Boris and Gove to do the right thing here? Do you believe in them? Ted from Dartford has texted 84850 to say, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, mere anarchy is loose upon the world, the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity, which is a Yeats poem, which is very kind of him to flag up my job on the Times Literary Supplement, but there you go, a poetry, the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Is that a fair explanation of our political system, I wonder? The best lack all conviction, the career politicians, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. 03456060973. Well, join me now before I get to your calls is Tom McCaig, the chief UK political correspondent for Politico. Tom, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you're a very busy man, no doubt, what with the entire political systems falling about our ears. Let's start with Corbyn, because I think it is the news, I suppose, of the last few hours. He's had 8 shadow secretaries of state from the shadow cabinet go. However, his support from the membership will presumably remain unchallenged. What's his positioning over the next 24 hours? Can he hold out against his own parliamentary party?
It's a game of brinkmanship now, I think. You know, Corbyn, under normal rules, Corbyn would have to go at this point. You know, he does not have the support of the shadow cabinet. He does not have the support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. So how can he lead them? You know, he will lose a vote of no confidence, presumably this week. Therefore, you would think he would have to go. But no, because he can just force it and force it and force it to the point where they go for another election. And then he wins. And then we're back to square one, and it's a face-off. So I think we're in times that are just extraordinary. We've never been here before.
Presumably, though, he might, I suppose one way that he could just personally think, I don't want this grief. The amount of grief he's going to have to go through now with this party openly, actively, not even briefing against him, actively ambushing him. Does he want that level of grief in his life, do you think?
He's an incredibly stoical person. I think this is often missed in the debate. You know, Jeremy has gone through his entire political career being an outsider and being abused and shouted at. You know, there's pictures of him walking over Westminster Bridge with Gerry Adams at the height of the Troubles. You know, this is somebody who is not afraid to be disliked. So I don't think that's gonna bother him. I think he sees it as a sort of his duty almost to represent the left of the party. So I think he's in for the long run. I mean, there is one interesting sort of intriguing possibility, and that is essentially that the Parliamentary Labour Party declare sort of independence from the Labour Party. They just say we're going to elect our own leader.
So we're going to have a Pope anti-Pope situation being created here. Do you think?
we could do. You know, they almost exile him into a sort of head of the party, but with no real power. You know, that's one possibility that's being discussed seriously by MPs.
Just before you go, Tom, you wrote about, and it's now coming out a little bit more, do you think Jeremy Corbyn wanted to undermine the Remain campaign? David Cameron, it would seem, from your article not least, repeatedly begged him to help, and he showed tremendous amount of reluctance. Is that a fair assessment? He was someone who was a reluctant Remainer and actually didn't even try to make Remain win.
Yeah, I think that is fair to a point. You know, he was certainly a reluctant Remainer. You know, he has been a Eurosceptic campaigner his entire life. I think at this point he compromised and he agreed to defend the European Union, but he did it with a heavy heart. However, he was absolutely determined not to stand alongside David Cameron or help him out. Corbyn thought that by following Cameron's agenda, he would only alienate Labour supporters more. That was the theory. But it got to a point where internal polling from Number 10 was saying to the Prime Minister, look, the best thing that you could do would be to stand alongside Corbyn here and give a show of unity. They begged Corbyn and he just flatly refused. You know, so there was outright fury in Number 10.
And does he own that now, Corbyn? Does he accept that, do you think?
Well, they're perfectly happy to accept that they refuse to work with David Cameron. You know, they openly admit that, but they don't accept that they are to blame. And you know, I think they have a fair case. I think 60% of Labour supporters voted to remain. David Cameron couldn't carry his party. You know, 60% of Tories, I think, voted to leave. So while Jeremy didn't do a very good job at persuading that 40% to come on side, this was David Cameron's fault, not Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, Tom, that's a very fair point to leave it. David Cameron put us into this mess. He's now walking away from the smoking wreckage. Who do you trust to get us through the next few months? 834560600973. Amjad is on the phone from Reading. Hi, Amjad.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for attending my call.
No worries.
I would say, we have a great faith on our politicians. They are very good. If we take David Cameron as an example, he will be remembered as the most honorable politician in the history because despite American pressure, he did give opportunity to the British public for the referendum, which British public say, yes, they want to leave EU. Now we got the most capable Boris Johnson, we got the most able Michael Gove, and we got extremely able Mrs. May. If the chance is given to them, they will take country out of the EU expeditiously, so we don't have any problem because these things just they have to be done and they will be done. And we are great.
Okay. Amjad, they're tremendously upbeat. He thinks Cameron was great to give us the opportunity, and he trusts Gove, May, and Johnson. Do you? 03456060973. Daniel's on the line from Hampstead. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Very good, thank you. What's your point?
I think it was one of the most stupidest point to do, even with a Democrat country, to give over this particular vote for people that don't even know from right and the left, and they should make the decision what to do. People don't care that I can't lose. People don't even know what's going to be the next day tomorrow or after tomorrow. I think one of the stupidest moves to give over for people to vote.
Do you, but having done that, how much faith do you have we can make the right decisions now?
Well, nothing wrong with the politicians. It's wrong with the politicians to give over for the vote for the people. The politicians, okay, because let's have Cameron. He said all the time, don't vote for to go out.
Yeah, but he didn't have to. But he's put us in this mess. He's given us this referendum.
Then I agree with you on that, because he wasn't alone to do that. People around him, advise him to do so.
Okay, Daniel. There. I mean, it's fairly punchily expressed. It wasn't the fault of the politicians. It was the fault of the people for voting this way. But if you ask the people a question, you've got to live with their answer, haven't you? And my strong view is that we have. That's what we want. And for the next hour, actually, we'll be talking about that. Do you think there's any likelihood? How would you feel if there was any move for the referendum to be rerun or not followed through? Have you to start building your thoughts on that? It would be extraordinary, wouldn't it, if that were to happen? I'll be talking to Dan Hanan, one of the architects of this Great Leave campaign, to ask him whether it would be possible for this referendum not to stand. Jay's on the line from Harrow. Hi, Jay.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm a bit disappointed with the politicians at the moment. Obviously, I don't think they accepted. They thought that we were going to remain in. This is massive shock to them, saying, all of a sudden the country has decided to leave.
Well, I think it is, Jay. I honestly think that
52% decided, and now they're going to be honourable, and they have to respect people's views and work for the people, and sort of find excuses not to go out. People have decided to go out.
Yeah, I agree. And do you think, though, Jay, that ultimately Cameron, he doesn't understand working class provincial Britain? He doesn't understand, and he didn't know what they were feeling. And when if he goes to the West Midlands, I'm from the East Midlands, he goes and walks around there. If he talks to people, he would know there was a very strong chance we could end up voting out, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't have the clue. He accepted the people are going to vote in, all the parties. And then he says, let's have this exercise, because he wanted to save his political career, and the party was putting a lot of pressure on him to have this referendum.
Yeah. And now where's it got us? Well, listen, we can obviously stick with the outcome of this referendum for the next 2 hours. For the next hour, well, actually, I'll tell you what's happening at 5 o'clock. I want you to tell me what it says about Britain. What does Britishness look like in a post-Brexit world? Does it look like, as some people say, a place which is anti-tolerance, anti-foreigner? Are we going to see an increase in attacks? Sundar Katwala, the director of the British Future think tank, will be with me for that hour. What does Britishness mean after Brexit? But before that, how would you feel if we didn't actually Brexit at all? 3 million people have signed a petition. There's talk of another referendum. There's talk of a general election getting in the way. Is it possible that Brexit might never happen? And if that does happen, how would you feel about it? 0345 60 60 973.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Stig Abell. Call 0345 60 60 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC.
Stig Abell here this Sunday afternoon on LBC. An awful lot to continue to talk about. We have seen over the course of the last few hours 8 shadow cabinet ministers either being sacked or resigning, the Labour Party in chaos, the Conservative Party in chaos after the resignation of David Cameron. At 5 o'clock we'll be discussing what the referendum means about Britishness. What does it really say about the tone and emotions of our nation? But now, what would happen if we didn't actually leave? It's not possible, is it? All this talk of petitions and second referendums and general elections getting in the way. Is there any chance we might not respect the democratic will of the people? That could never happen, could it? 0345 60 60 973. So, politics seems to be broken. We've just been discussing for the last hour who the hell is going to lead our nation into the world of the post-EU. And it looks a little worrying, doesn't it? It feels worrying to me. It feels like we might not have the ability to do it. Does that mean there's any chance whatsoever that Brexit will not happen, in your view? Now listen, before you call and abuse me personally, I start from this position. I voted for the first time ever in this referendum. I voted Remain just. I wavered for a long time. I understand the arguments for leave. I voted Remain. The public has decided. We now have a decision that's been taken. Britain should leave the European Union. That is the will of the people, which must be respected. And yet, I start to see, and I've heard talk of this quite often now, it might never happen. People used to call me on this show and say, don't worry, the government will find some way of stopping this from happening, won't they? You can't trust the government. Is there any chance that we don't go through with this Brexit? What are the arguments against it? Well, first, people, losers in the argument, Remainers, will say that this decision was only approved by 36% of the voting population. Just 36% of the people have made this decision to kick us out of the Union. That's not a mandate, people would say. The referendum should have had a threshold. It should have said you need 2/3 for something like this, something as serious as this. It didn't. People are now pointing to an online petition. I can't tell you how annoying I find this, with more than 3 million names calling for another referendum. This makes me despair. If people wanted to vote, and I've been a non-voter in my time, if they wanted to vote, they should have voted. People who voted have given us this decision. This is the decision we have to live with. 3 million people are saying, though, no, we want another referendum. What's the thinking behind that? Here's another argument for doing this again. The leave arguments that have been put to make us leave have been proven to be untrue. Nigel Farage said 350 million quid should be given to the NHS. He said on Friday morning, that was a mistake. It wasn't one of my adverts. Not me, boss. Ian Duncan Smith today. Our promises were a series of possibilities. Now, if their promises were a series of possibilities and not promises, are we entitled to say, my vote wasn't a promise? My vote wasn't a confirmed position. It was a series of possibilities. I voted leave, but now you've told me things aren't true. I better change my mind again. Should we be bound by the decisions taken by everyone who believed them? How about this for a reason? In order to extricate ourselves from the EU, we need to enact Article 50 and start the process. It should have happened on Friday morning. Everyone said it was going to happen on Friday morning. It didn't. So someone now needs to do it and then take responsibility for what follows. What it means to Scotland, what it means to Ireland, what it means to the economy, to our security. So there's a theory emerging. This will never happen. And an election will intervene. The next Tory leader, say it's Johnson, as soon as he gets elected, will have to go to the country. He'll have to say, I need your mandate. What happens then if, during that election, someone stands as a Remain candidate? A party, the Labour Party, under a different leader, stands as a Remain party. And they win. Does that mean the mandate has been superseded? Scotland, meanwhile, is looking to veto the decision. We heard from Alex Salmond earlier. They're not going to approve a bid by Westminster to start the process. How does that make you feel? Could Scotland say, sorry guys, we don't agree with this, and unless you give us our independence, we're not going to go along with you in the bid to get out of the EU? Is there any way, in your mind, plausibly, the government, the establishment, can reasonably ignore the will of the people now? Are you a Remainer who sees hope that this whole thing will be cancelled like a bad Dallas-style dream? Are you a Brexiter with a sense of remorse for your decision and secretly wish this thing could be revoked? I can't believe... I spoke to someone today, this afternoon, who said that to me. I can't believe that I made this decision and I really regret it. It was a protest vote. I didn't mean it. I want the chance to do this over. Or do you want to tell me that you knew the British establishment would find a way of screwing the people? The people have spoken. And we've got to listen to them. That's my opinion. I believe in democracy. I believe that we have to see the will of the people. Do you agree with me? Do you think there's any chance whatsoever that this could change? 0345 6060973. Well, to discuss this with me is one of the key architects. In many ways, I'll do him the compliment of being the most credible architect in the Leave campaign. Dan Hannan, the MEP. Can I call you a former MEP yet, Dan?
Not quite yet. I've been working towards this day for 26 years, 17 of them as an MEP, and the end's in sight. But, you know, we're going to take our time to make sure that the departure terms are fair to all sides. So is there any plausibility in the notion that's starting to occasionally pick up a bit of steam that the government is not going to do this? We are not going to see Brexit because a general election will intervene. No one will enact Article 50. This is not going to happen. The fact that this rumour has come about goes a long way to explain why politicians are held in such contempt. The idea that the public has voted and that then, you know, professional politicians can undo the will of the people is so outrageous. I don't think it will happen, but the fact that it's even being suggested goes a long way to explaining the current mood of this country.
One of the reasons that politicians aren't respected is the sense that they say things to get you to vote and then resile from them. I mentioned a couple, you know, Nigel Farage saying that he didn't agree with the idea that 350 million quid a week could go on the NHS. In some ways, the Leave movement was entirely driven or largely driven by that promise, and that promise isn't true, is it?
£350 is our gross contribution. It will be up to a future government to decide how to spend it. I think the NHS is a candidate for it. But, you know, a referendum is not a general election. You know, if you think about it, voting Leave doesn't mean you're electing the Leave campaign. It means you're instructing the government to get us out of the EU. The whole argument here is that we'll have power back so that our representatives can decide what to do with these things, and it'll be up to a future British Parliament to decide. I think people understand that.
But do they not understand, though, Dan, that it's actually more important than electing a government? It's electing an idea that will linger for generations to come. And Liam Fox, who's on the Leave campaign, said a lot of things were said in advance of this referendum that we might want to think about again. Ian Duncan-Smith, our promises were a series of possibilities. If anyone has made a promise that has led someone to vote and that turns out not to be true, that's an act of grotesque fraud, isn't it?
Look, at every opportunity throughout this campaign, I mean, I wrote a book about it, I've been on countless platforms, I've made the point that if you vote to leave, you're giving the government a mandate, you're giving the government an instruction like you instruct a barrister. Obviously, the Leave campaign was a coalition. There were Labour people, UKIP people, Greens, Conservatives. Of course, we weren't able to offer a concrete manifesto. The point is that from now on, Parliament will be sovereign, and elections will matter again, and will have restored honour and purpose to the act of voting.
And look, Ben, I'm not in any way questioning
and a referendum.
I'm not questioning your personal credibility on this, but the poster that Boris Johnson stood in front of, and that literally the poster child of the Leave movement said this: let's give our NHS the 350 million quid the EU takes every week. On the Friday, that was said not to be true. And it's not true, is it? It's not let us give our NHS the 350 million quid the EU takes every week. That is not a truth. That's what concerns some people, that a vote took place on the back of things that turn out not to be true.
Well, we will have extra money. How we spend it will be up to us. The NHS is obviously a strong candidate, but there are other candidates as well, and we'll have, I hope, in a growing economy, as we reorient away from a declining, collapsing Eurozone towards the rest of the world, we'll have a lot more than 350 million quid a week to play with. But that's going to happen over time and with the consent of our elected officials. It's going to be up to us.
With the best will of the world, that doesn't really fit on a bus, does it?
You know, I think people, I don't remember meeting anyone in the whole campaign who didn't understand the difference between a general election and a referendum. People understood that this was about taking back control so that we can instruct our government what to do, not least with the money that will come from our independence dividend.
Do you think that the border, the area of the border between Calais and Dover, that's another area that sort of came out during the referendum where it was said by David Cameron, I think, that there's a risk that the whole Calais region could say the border control now needs to move to Dover. That was called Project Fear. We have Xavier Bertrand now saying that the 2K agreement by which the border is in Calais should be denounced. Do you think that is something that has changed in the 2 days?
Has been popping up every 5 minutes to denounce it. It's not up to the Mayor of Calais. This was a bilateral deal between France and the UK, had nothing whatever to do with the EU. It worked in the interests of both countries, and I think it still works in the interests of both countries. And the French Interior Minister, whose decision it is, rather than the Mayor of Calais, has confirmed that it will remain in place. I just want to make a broader point about issues of this kind, if I may.
Of course.
Look, okay, we've won, which is wonderful, and British people were brave enough and collected and calm enough to disregard all the fears and the threats and the bullying from the mega banks and the politicians, which is great. However, we shouldn't be triumphalist, we who are on the Leave side. We won by a narrow margin. We won 52 to 48. We lost in Scotland. We lost in Northern Ireland. We can't just wish that fact away. So we need now to try and build a consensus. We need to try and move together with people who voted Remain and people who voted Leave towards a relationship with the rest of the EU that both sides can live with. And what that means is that we're not going to do anything precipitate or unilateral or extreme. We're going to try and move forward by consent and with the agreement, wherever possible, of our European allies towards the kind of phased recovery of powers.
And is there a plan, Dan? Because I think that's a very fair point. Are you aware of the existence of a plan that does that? So when we look at Gove and Johnson, the eyes, they had that funereal press conference where I'm sure they were trying to strike a unifying tone, but they looked like they panicked. They looked like they were panicking. Is there a concrete plan that you've seen that will show that phasing approach over the next 6 months?
Well, I mean, I've written a book called Why Vote Leave that sold 20,000 copies during the campaign, setting out how a post-EU Britain might look. Obviously, I'm not the Prime Minister, and obviously, half the country nearly didn't vote for that, and so we may need to tone parts of it down. But yes, absolutely, we can get to the kind of position that I think the rest of the EU was offering us before the PM began his current renegotiation, which is basically a common market, not a common government. And even some of the really hard-line federalists on the continent were happy to offer us that kind of a deal. I mean, Jacques Delors, he was calling it privileged partnership. Guy Verhofstadt, the Belgian Liberal leader, he was saying, he calls it associate membership. The essence of it is that we remain part of a free trade area, but outside the political union. Now, obviously, a lot of argument about the details, but broad outlines of that deal, I think, are something that could carry most Remain voters and most Leave voters.
Why don't we invoke Article 50 in that sense, then? Because Article 50 shows, let's kick this thing off. A phase plan is possible. Let's start. Let's start the ball rolling now. Why have we not done that to show intent?
The only thing that Article 50 does is it starts a countdown. And there's absolutely no advantage to us in doing that until we've got the broad outlines of a deal hammered out with our friends and allies on the continent.
Yeah, Peter Sutherland, the UN Special Envoy, just tweeted about a couple of hours ago, there's no excuse delaying to invoke Article 50. Negotiations will disclose UK's impossible situation. A second referendum seems inevitable. Do you think we have the ability, this thing I've been talking about for the last hour, do we have the ability to extricate ourselves from something this big when a government, the seating government, appeared to take no steps to start that process, even on a contingency basis? Is that not a bit of a worry, Dan, that Osborne had no plan, and now we're in a world where a plan is necessary, and the government...
I mean, there are ways to... I think that tweet that you just quoted tells you everything about the disdain and contempt that these Eurocrats have for the electorate. They never want to accept a referendum outcome. They didn't do it in Ireland, in Peter Sutherland's native Ireland. They didn't do it in the Netherlands. They didn't do it in France. They didn't do it in Denmark. And they're trying, even now, not to accept the verdict of the people. Now, listen, as I say, I'm keen to meet people halfway on this. I'm aware that, half the people listening to this programme voted Remain, and that's why I'm saying we will do this moderately. But the flip side of that is we have to accept the bottom line here, which is that people have voted to take back jurisdiction. Although we can do that in a gentle way, in a phased way, there's no way here that we can just pretend that the country didn't vote the way it did.
I totally agree with that, Dan. Do you feel slightly let down then by the government? Because you're talking about meeting halfway. Is it extraordinary? I mean, maybe you could tell me this isn't true, but it does appear that the government has done very little post-Brexit planning. And therefore, meeting halfway, starting the process, getting this thing up and running, you'd expect the sitting government to have started thinking about it. It doesn't look like they did.
I think that's a really important point, Stig. The existing government had a strong position, as you know. Taxpayers' money was deployed for the Remain campaign, and the civil service was not neutral. It was, that the official position of HMG was that Britain should remain in the European Union. Now, plainly, for the renegotiation to work, there has to be a reversal of the formal position of the British state. They need to stop being in that mindset and start looking at how we find an equitable solution that is in our interest but is also fair to our European allies. And that means, I think, that you need to have a different set of people in charge. Yeah. It can't be the Foreign Office officials, the Sir Humphreys in Brussels, who brought us to this unhappy position. I'll say this frankly, if David Cameron had come back with a much better deal, it's pretty clear that the referendum would not have gone the way it did. It was that narrow a result. I think a lot of people voted to leave because of the total failure to get better terms, the apparent intractability of Brussels, its refusal to make any meaningful concessions. Now, part of that was the fault of our permanent officials. They didn't try and get us out of anything, except the migration. They put all their eggs in that basket, and then they failed to get...
They didn't deliver it. Daniel, I've got to go because we've got to go to the travel, but that's Dan Hannan. Thank you so much for joining me, Dan Hannan. I think the most credible architect of the Leave campaign. My concern, which is not the question for the Leave campaign, is did the government really plan this? Did they think this could happen? But in any event, over to you. People are talking, not me, I hasten to add. I think we are where we are. We voted where we voted. Is it possible that Brexit doesn't happen, in your view? And how would you feel if this didn't go through, bearing in mind all that has gone on in the past? 03456060973. The switchboard has been bubbling since we asked that question, so I'll get on as many as I can after the travel. I'm Stig Abell. This is LBC. It's 4:20.
This is LBC with Stig Abell.
So we voted. 52% of those who voted Brexit. 36% of the total electorate. There's a story just nosing around that does this mean we actually will leave? If there's a general election that comes once Boris Johnson, say, wins the leadership of the Tory party, whoever unseats Corbyn, if they do, becomes the leader of the Labour Party, what happens if that happens? Would we pause on Brexit while we deal with that other bit of democracy, the general election? Is it plausible in your mind that Brexit would not now happen? To my mind, we voted how we voted. And therefore the will of the people is sovereign. France just beat Ireland today 2-1 in the football. Should Ireland be allowed to petition the competition and say, can we overturn that result? I don't like it. Can we do it again? Let's do that game again. 2-1 France, but we don't like that. We'd like Ireland to go through, so let's do that game again. Or is there a good reason for having another referendum? Just 36% of people voted leave in terms of the nation as a whole. What do you think? 03456060973. Nando is on the line from Welling. Hi, Nando.
Hi, hello, good afternoon, Steve. How are you?
Very good, thank you. What's your point?
The point is very simple. The electorate has been conned. As simple as. I am a firmly believer in democracy, and I think the thing should stand as long as the arguments were factual and true. The problem that I have with this is that we all know exactly where we're heading, and a complete abyss, and we just don't have the political power to actually lead us towards a proper conclusion and a proper Brexit. The issue that I'm trying to highlight here is that we have been told lies, and they have...
Well, what lies in particular, Nando, bothers you?
Well, the 350 million pounds NHS weekly coming back. Now I was listening, and I've been listening to the argument. I voted Remain, by the way, and this morning, Mr. Ian Duncan-Smith just acknowledged that he was not part of the 350 million pounds.
Oh yeah, none of them want to linger. Our promises were a series of possibilities, said Ian Duncan-Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we have a situation whereby he is backing off and he's telling us that it's only 160 million. So that makes me wonder what else they have actually...
But here's the thing, Nando. Politicians have been lying to us since the birth of politics. Every government that's ever been elected has been elected on the basis of half-truths or mistruths or misleading statements or leading points or points without being costed properly. That's just the nature of human interaction. So why would we expect this referendum to be any different?
Well, because we have a historical opportunity, one, to undo something that is going to give us so much trouble, not for just us, future generations. Yeah. Think about Europe. I mean, we have already have a taster as to what is going to come in our way. We know that we can actually undo this. at the end of the day, it's a question of triggering this Article 50, and we haven't done so yet. So we still have plenty of time. I'm afraid, I think this argument would have been clear-cut if we had a vast majority of people voting Brexit, but we unfortunately did not. And we should have something like 60-40 in order to make, beyond any doubt, any result.
Okay, that's none of that. I mean, the point is we didn't. We should have, the debate that possibly we could have had a few months ago is if we're going to have this referendum, it has to be 60-40. It has to be 55-45. But we didn't. And we are where we are. I just don't think you can live in this country and then not accept the will of the people in the end. That's the point about voting. Lots of people are unhappy, but the people who voted won. There's no dodginess, there's no fraud, is there? Joshua, where do you stand on this?
Oh, Stig, I'm so angry at the moment. I'm fuming. First of all, what's happening? We are facing the actual death of democracy, as we understand it. If this referendum is rerun, what they're basically saying is, we will only allow you to vote if you come up with the right answer.
I agree with you.
It's just not possible. It's impossible.
I mean, I think that you can make an argument, which I had some sympathy with before all this, which is if you're going to make a big decision like this either way, you could have said it needed to be 60-40 or 55-45.
You can't say that either, Stig, because the moment you put a leaning on it or a weighting on it, what you're actually saying is you can vote providing that it fits with the outcome that we want. Because if you say that it has to be 60-40, you're already putting a bias on the vote.
But there's quite a lot in lots of sort of smaller committee type things. Quite often they say there should be smaller. There needs to be a significant majority to do a decision of magnitude. But in any event, that was a debate for a year ago, which we didn't have.
Exactly, but they had time to plan this referendum, and if they wanted to put that condition in, why did they not do so?
Yeah, well, exactly. I agree with that. And lots of things. David, you know what I think actually this boils down to, Joshua, is David Cameron, George Osborne, people like him, they don't understand what working class people in the provinces outside of London actually think. And so in their mind, they thought we'll have an election and we'll vote to stay.
Well, this is it. I mean, what's happened over this weekend has also infuriated me. The fact that so many MPs are throwing their toys out because they didn't get the result that they wanted. Are we actually in a democracy, or are we now living in a dictatorship where we elect people to go to Parliament thinking that they're representing us, and when they get into Parliament, they do what they want as opposed to what the people want? I mean, this is so obvious that I mean, if, for example, there is another vote for another referendum, they have to be careful that there isn't a revolution in this country, because the feeling is so strong that politics no longer works for the working man, that they have to be very, very careful what they're actually unleashing.
Yeah, Joshua, I think that's a very fair point indeed. I mean, like in the end, I voted Remain. I voted for the first time in my life, and my vote counted. And that's why I voted. I got to a point where I knew my vote would count. But in the end, the nation has spoken. Like I said, you can make an argument before the event that we need more than a 51-49 win to give us a mandate. We could have put the threshold at 60%, at 55%, but we didn't. Do you seriously think there's an argument for not doing it? Or do you believe that the political system has changed? Actually, the answer will be we need a general election. Corbyn is on his way out. Cameron has gone. There's going to be a general election. At what point are we actually ever going to declare this Article 50 and get going? I think this is plausible. I'm not saying this because I think we should ignore the will of the people. But if there's an election, say Boris Johnson goes to the country after being elected Tory leader, stands as a Leave candidate, his opponent stands as a Remain candidate, and the Remain one wins. What happens then if we have an elected Prime Minister on a Remain ticket after this referendum? What happens then? What do we do? Is that not plausible that we'd then have another referendum at that point? 03456060973. And again, I hasten to say, before people start attacking me on text and Twitter, I accept the will of the people. The Lib Dems have said today it's their sole interest in a future general election is to stand on a Remain ticket. What happens if they get elected? I know we're in the realm of fantasy there with the Lib Dems getting elected. But it is plausible, is it not? Corbyn leaves, a Remain Labour candidate stands against a discredited Tory and wins. I think that's a plausible series. But in any event, where would you stand? Is there any chance that the will of the people is not listened to? And would you want that? Are you a Remainer who says, you know what, I want that. We made a terrible decision. I don't care about democracy. We're a parliamentary democracy, not a direct democracy anyway. Why having a referendum? Or do you have to actually bow your head to the will of the people? 0345 60 973, text 84845. I'm just saying, there's a little chance, is there not, of an election interfering with Article 50 being enacted and us getting going on this. I could be wrong. Give me a call, 0345 60 973. Meanwhile, here is the news on LBC. It's Brexit won. People are now suggesting there could be mechanisms for it not happening. And I'm interested in your views of where you stand on that. Do you think it's in a way possible, plausible, democratic for this vote to be overturned? Again, I'll say this because people I think want to hear this from me. I voted Remain in the end after some level of thought. I think the vote must stand. I'm not arguing for this. People have argued for it, though, and I'm interested in your take on it. And I do believe there's a scenario that exists if a general election interferes with Brexit before we initiate Article 50 to get us going. What happens if a Remain-type candidate wins the election? What would happen then? 0345 60 973. I want to hear your views. Do you think there's any mechanism, should there be any mechanism, for overturning Brexit, or that would be a disgrace to democracy? Eileen is on the line from Bradford upon Avon. Hi, Eileen.
Hello.
Hi, what's your point?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think in some ways you're all missing the point with the reason why we've got an out vote, because the margin is so small. And the thing is that in a little village like this, there's someone I know who's in his 70s, and because this is a Conservative constituency, always has been, as a Labour voter, his vote has never counted.
Yeah.
And he said that for the first time in his life, and he's in his 70s now, he was going to vote. And he was going to vote out because he's never been anywhere. I don't think he's ever been out of the village. He's worked locally. And he sees the people on the other side of the channel all trying to get into this country. And that's what's influenced him.
But isn't it a shame, Eileen, Eileen, is it a shame that someone's decision-making on something like our membership of the European Union is conditioned by the fact he's never left the country?
No, and I don't think he's even left the village. And it's just you see, the margin is so small. Now, if you think of the whole of the country, take people in Hull, for instance, who are always going to get a Labour member. So a lot wouldn't have a very high turnout, and a lot of them wouldn't bother to vote. Now, this time, they knew their vote was going to count.
I agree, Eileen, I agree with that. I voted for the first time.
Well, there you go.
For that reason. I understand exactly what you're saying, but the question is, it is such a small majority. Do you think that's a mandate to do something as big as this, something as a smaller majority as this?
Yes, I do, because in the general election, the general election hinged partly because there was a lot of, feeling one way and the other, and after the Brown and the Blair and after the coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and the referendum was part of the manifesto, and we all accepted that. And because of that, they had to have the referendum. And now the referendum's gone the wrong way because they didn't think it through. We're not used to having referendums in this country.
No.
And the people have... And do you know what I think should now happen?
Go on.
I think Mr. Johnson should say he's not going to run for Prime Minister, that he's putting his weight behind Theresa May, and because she would because we voted for this Conservative Party for the next 4 years they got to run.
Yeah, but Theresa May wanted to remain.
Well, I know, but equally she has been in charge of immigration, and she's got feelings about that which coincide with some of the out people.
OK, that's an interesting point that Eileen's making. But a man voted in her village because he knew his vote would count. It would be an outrage for that vote to then not be counted. A counter view to that has just texted 84850, no names, that if 50% of the eligible electorate voted Brexit, there would be no argument. 37% is not a mandate. There always had to be a parliamentary vote before notifying under Article 50. the referendum isn't a mandatory instruction. He's right, or she is right, technically. How would you feel if the Parliament of this nation just regarded this referendum as a recommendation rather than an instruction? They'd be outraged, wouldn't they? That'd be the end of the world. 03456060973. Susanna's on the line from Notting Hill. Hi, Susanna.
Oh, hi, Stig. Well, like you, I voted Remain, and I mean not all that keenly because I know all the defects of the EU. And, you know, I was aghast on Thursday night, sitting up all night long, you know, just couldn't believe it. But I think now it's happened, even with a small margin for leave. I think we have to stick to that because, as the previous contributor said, I mean, people are already so disillusioned with the political class and so on, and this would be yet further confirmation, you know, that they're always going to ignore the will of important sectors who've actually been ignored. And I think we should get on with it fairly quickly, actually. And
are we a great nation or not? If we believe we're a great nation, then we should be able to cope with anything, shouldn't we?
I mean, I was a bit annoyed when I heard Daniel Hannan talking as if he thinks everybody's read his book, because
Yeah, I know.
he said he's the great architect. But I mean, I think a lot of voters actually did think that these were pledges, because I'm looking at the bus again. You know, we send the EU 350 million, let's fund our NHS instead. Well, I mean, that's clearly like a pledge. And also, they've been rowing back from immigration today and saying, no, well, you know, we can't give you a figure and we can't say it will be tens of thousands, but we'll have it under control.
And the question, I suppose, Susanna, is this. Does that matter? Because all politicians lie all the time, and they get elected on the basis of those lies all the time. And they've done it again. But that's just the nature of human beings. Human beings tell people what they want to hear. And I guess if you were to overturn every election because politicians told a lie, then we'd never have an election, would we?
No, but as we're told, this is a once-in-a-lifetime decision, and it's going to affect the young particularly much, you know. And there was all the debate, there were BBC fact sites. I think people really did want to understand the facts, and that's a terribly complex issue.
Yeah, well, it did. Susanna, you're exactly right. Susanna raises the point which we raised at the beginning, that some of the claims, the pledges by the Leave campaign, Ian Duncan-Smith has said they weren't so much premises as pledges as a series of possibilities. Liam Fox said a lot of things were said in advance of this referendum that we might want to think about again. Does that give you any reason to say, well, let's clear up these facts before we have a referendum properly? Or is that just the nature of the political business? 03456060973. Kevin is on the line from Finchley. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Stig. Stig, like you, I voted Remain. I'm from Finchley, I'm from North London. I earn decent money. I own my own house. And, you know, the last couple of days have made me really think about, you know, those people in, say, Abell in Wales or in Sunderland. You know, we are kind of like different worlds. And I, you know, kind of sat down and thought, you know, I understand the reasons why they voted Leave. Okay, you know, I don't like it. I think the reasons are probably misplaced, but I have to kind of respect their decision and understand what they've done, and say, okay, if that's where most of the country has gone, you know, even if it's a small margin, why don't we, okay, and I say we as in the government or team, need to basically pull together or galvanise the country and try and pull the country together so it heads in the same direction, but in a positive direction. Because at the moment, I think there is so much abject hate, okay, and there's so much, you know, I mean, seriously, I mean, my cousin got into a fight this morning. He basically put pictures on Facebook. He was in a fight because he got called the N-word. Now, he hasn't been called the N-word for 2 decades. This, unfortunately, has opened up some negativity within the country. We need to heal that.
Kevin, it's so interesting that you say that, because for the next hour at 5 o'clock, we're going to be saying, what does Britishness look like as a result of this referendum? And there are these reports. How can you link, though, and is there a reason for you to say that the hatred stirred up by this referendum led to your cousin being called the N-word? Do you think that might be a coincidence, or do you think you can honestly say there's a causal link between the two?
It would be nonsensical to believe that there is not a link between the vile, inhumane rhetoric that has been created. You know, I was to talk to a friend of mine. I said, unfortunately, you know, you're always going to have racist people. You're always going to have people who don't like the other. I get that, okay? But what is But what's happened is that you have actually enabled and allowed people to intellectualise their hatred. And they all of a sudden said, oh, guess what? I can say it's about the numbers. I can say it's about the hospital waiting list, because then it gives them ground. No, I'm not saying that everyone who has problems with numbers are racist, but unfortunately the racists will have a legitimate reason to get riled up. And unfortunately there has been plenty of reports of people saying, look at us now, we can kick you out. Look what happened over in Huntington, where the despicable anti-Polish notes went through doors. Yes, of course it is. People have got galvanised, and guess what? We need to basically pull away from that very, very soon before the chasm opens up even further, Stig.
There you go, Kevin. And look, Kevin, that's a perfect introduction to our last hour. Do you believe that this has stirred up a dormant level of hatred in this country and changed what Britishness actually is? Or is that just in some ways scaremongering by people who lost? I'm not saying that about Kevin, I'm saying that generally speaking. There's a line that's been doing the rounds that not all of the people who voted Leave are racist. Most of them aren't racist, but the racists who voted Leave might feel that their whole way of thinking has been endorsed. Is that a risk? I wonder. We'll be talking about it at 5 o'clock. Ian has texted and said, I've signed the petition for another referendum. I understand some people are signing it who voted out, and they regret that now. If you sign this petition, and I know there's a lot of talk, it's 3 million, but there's lots of dodginess around the people who've signed it, people from foreign countries, spam, and there's lots of reasons to question the legitimacy of this petition. If you have signed it, give me a call. Tell me why. Why should we have another referendum? Don't be a bad loser. If you voted Remain, you lost. The people have spoken. Now's the time to listen. Kevin voted Remain. He thinks it's caused racism and tarnished the British name, but he wants us to get on with it because he respects the will of the British nation. If you've signed this petition, give me a call, 0345 60 60973. And then at 5 o'clock, let's have an honest debate about what Britishness now looks like. The young people voted to Remain. They've not been listened to. Immigrants tended to vote Remain. They've not been listened to. We're now hearing reports, potentially, of people of foreign extraction being insulted. Has Britishness changed as a result of this referendum? Does that mean we should do it again? Again, for the people who are calling me all sorts of names, I think we stick to the referendum. Some people don't. 0345 60 60973. I'm Stig Abell. This is LBC on the historic post-Brexit weekend. It is now 4:46. Very good afternoon. Before we go at the 5 o'clock hour to talk about what Britishness looks like in this world of a referendum, a world in which Scotland and England disagree, in which the young and the old disagree, in which immigrants and indigenous people disagree, what is left of our national identity, and is it indeed a positive national identity? We'll be getting into all of that at 5 o'clock. Before then, I'm just raising the possibility, because others have raised it, that some people are considering we don't Brexit despite this referendum. Again, I don't think that's right. I think we have to respect the will of the people. Some people are suggesting that we don't. We ignored the referendum and we continue. 0345 60 60973. Debbie's on the line from Erith. Hi, Debbie.
Hiya. Well, I think we ignore the referendum at our peril.
You must be right.
God help us all, quite frankly, if this sort of the pro-Remain people are saying that we should renege on what the electorate's decided. What does this actually say about the state of democracy in this country and in Europe? I think a lot of people wanted to leave Europe because they did feel that it was becoming quite undemocratic.
Yep.
Now, our governments, supposedly, and they're saying Jeremy Corbyn should have followed the line, etc. What line? The line of the people or the line of those in big business, etc.?
Well, I think Jeremy Corbyn should have followed his principles, and if he thought he wanted to leave the EU, he should have done us the courtesy of telling us that, rather than pretending he didn't. I mean, that's my only criticism of Corbyn.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I do feel seriously that, I do think it's being whipped up in the media that, this is the old against the young, etc. My daughter's 22. We know lots and lots of people of her age, actually, and certainly not the type of percentage that's being discussed, who voted to leave. And they're young people that are very well informed. Whereas, I don't mean to be rude, but in our schools, I know for a fact we don't teach the cons of the EU. We actually teach all of the pros, and I think that's extremely wrong, and it's not fair on our young.
Yeah.
But I am very concerned because I do feel that the way this is going, God help us all, seriously, if that is the state of our democracy. If people have not voted, that is their problem. But to now pull forward, this supposed petition, which states that, as far as I've heard, and I don't know how true it is, I've read on a number of sites now that there are people from all over the EU voting on this petition.
I also think, Debbie, it's an online petition. It's meaningless. I mean, it's just what people do when they've got anything else to do. I think the notion that you can overturn a referendum via a petition is it's farcical, because if you want to have direct democracy, you vote in the goddamn referendum, don't you? You don't go on a petition after the event.
You do, but what concerns me is, and we all know, not everyone, but some people were complaining about the fact that only so many voted for Cameron. Nothing was done about that, as it should be, because that was democratic. But certainly now, to start pulling this one and to say, why hasn't Article 50 been invoked? I want to know why it hasn't.
Shall I tell you why I think it hasn't? I think the government has done no planning about what a post-Brexit world looks like. Johnson and Gove have not, and understandably so to a certain extent, they've not got any detailed plans. The markets are very wobbly. If you were to, on the morning after the referendum, invoke Article 50, you'd then be imposing a time frame which you'd then have to live up to. And you might well think that the government's not done proper enough planning to enable us to do that. Look, that's the very much the pro position, that if we wanted to do it, we needed to be prepared to have gone through all of the boxes, and we weren't ready to do that, so it's wrong to unnecessarily start it now.
But these people are there to represent the will of the people, therefore they should have done that.
Debbie, well, there you go. Debbie thinks we actually should invoke Article 50 now, which is an interesting point, and that's how you represent the will of the people. I can't tell you how many people are calling on this, and we'll continue, I hope, to call for the next hour, but something has happened today which we need to reflect on. 7 people have been seriously hurt after a roller coaster derailed at the M&D's theme park in Motherwell today. Connor Gillies, LBC reporter in Scotland, joins me now. Hi, Connor.
Very good afternoon to you from Scotland here, where Police Scotland and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service have declared a major incident here, where around 20 to 4 this afternoon, one of the roller coasters at M&D's theme park in the Motherwell area derailed. It came crashing off its run and fell through, what we're hearing from eyewitnesses, through a gated fence and landed upside down. Now, Police Scotland have just confirmed that 7 people have been hurt at the moment. Sources within the police have told me that a number of those are indeed life-threatening injuries. Now, eyewitnesses say that this roller coaster appears to have fallen some distance. There's talk of around 20 metres from its height, and the people were indeed trapped inside. Eyewitnesses have told me that they heard shrieks across the park itself, and then silence when the sort of realisation of what happened. Now, just reading through some of the literature on the M&D's website today, this is a ride called the Tsunami Ride, and it boasts of going at speeds of up to 65 kilometres an hour through corkscrew twists, turns and loops on a 650 kilometre 650 metre track. So this is obviously causing concern here, and the pictures that are certainly emerging show the carriages upside down, people trapped inside, and in one picture that I've tweeted in the last half an hour shows actually one of the wheels from this Tsunami Ride coming to the ground and landing in the middle of where people were standing. Now, unconfirmed areas of report here as well suggest that a children's ride was in the vicinity and possibly could have been impacted by this. Again, unconfirmed, and Police Scotland remaining very tight-lipped in what's a developing major story here in Scotland.
Conor Gillies, LBC reporter in Scotland, thank you very much indeed. We'll keep you up to date with that as it develops, but 7 people have been seriously hurt after a roller coaster derailed at the M&D's theme park in Motherwell. As Connor just said there, unconfirmed, but near to a children's ride as well. We very much hope for all the best for people involved in that, but at the minute that is still a very much developing situation. We're talking about the possibility, the plausibility of another referendum, because for some reason, or for lots of reasons, people are unwilling to accept the last referendum. That sounds to me like anti-democratic madness, but I'm interested in your views on that. Andrew is on the line from Dorchester. Hi, Andrew.
Yes, hi. I'm very interested by this subject because I've watched in dismay how people have gone into meltdown over this result, and I think that we really need to take a breath and just collect ourselves as a fully grown adult population and understand that if we do not respect this referendum, we are sending a message out across the world that we do not live in a democracy, and we can no longer pontificate to countries like China, for example, who do not have a democracy, that they should have one, and that actually we are living in an authoritarian country. And I think it's really quite appalling because some people haven't got the result that they wanted, that they are behaving in this manner. I feel really appalled, actually.
I think in the end, the only scenario I can conceive of this happening, because like I said, democracy has got to win here. What would happen, though, if we don't invoke Article 50, because we're preparing, there's a general election, the Tory candidate stands as a pro-Brexit, the Labour candidate stands as a pro-Remain, and the Labour candidate wins. And therefore, you then end up having.
Sorry, I think you're running ahead of yourself. The whole beauty of this now is that for the first time in our relationship with the European Union, we no longer have to do what they say when it comes to this Article 50. Jean-Claude Juncker has allowed his mask to slip over the last couple of days, and I have made the observation, whilst the elected people who represent their countries are trying to be as emollient and as accommodating as possible, because obviously they see the very same scenario happening in their countries. Mr. Juncker, who is not elected and is in fact a civil servant, is getting completely out of control, frankly. And I think that it's absolutely correct that our Prime Minister wants a breathing space for this country to absolutely collect ourselves, and then we can start instigating this thing, because as you know, it is a clock ticking and we cannot afford to go rushing into it.
Andrew, that's a very fair summary of the situation. The political situation is, of course, moving quickly today, particularly in the Labour Party. Vernon Coker has resigned as the Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, which is interesting because Northern Ireland is itself in some degree of flux today post-Brexit. He's the 8th member of Jeremy Corbyn's top team to stand down today. Hilary Benn was sacked overnight after admitting to Corbyn he had no faith in his leadership. And then today we have lost via resignation Heidi Alexander, Seema Malhotra, Lucy Powell, Gloria Di Piero, Ian Murray, Kerry McCarthy, Lillian Greenwood and now Vernon Coker. All resigned today from the Shadow Cabinet. We will keep you up to date with all of those movements over the last hour of the show. Can Jeremy Corbyn cling on with a parliamentary party that hates him, but a membership that loves him? In the last hour, I want to pause for a second and reflect. What does it actually say about our country, this Brexit? What does it say that young people tended to vote in and old people tended to vote out? What does it say that immigrants tended to vote in and indigenous people tended to vote out? What does it say about it when people with more education tended to vote in and people with less education tended to vote out? What does Britishness mean in the post-Brexit world? Is it a world of proud independence and pride in our nation, or is it a world in which we distrust people from other countries? What do you think?
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Stig Abell. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC.
Very good afternoon to you. It's Stig Abell here this Sunday afternoon on LBC. Lots of people have been calling throughout the day, and we'll try and get as many of you on as possible. I want to just try and target what we're talking about for a second. Great Britain has voted to leave the EU. Brexit has happened. What does that say about Britishness? What does that say about our national identity? What is our national identity in a word? I've got some figures from the FT about breakdown in voting, which comes from an analysis of polling. You can choose to believe it or not believe it. But it shows skews in demographics of people who voted each way. And I'm interested in you calling me and saying, this is the nation that we've created with this Brexit. This is the nation we now believe in. That's what I want to hear from you over the next hour. Yeah, so what does the referendum tell us about our nation? What are the facts about the vote? Now, here's the thing we think we know. I'm using the FT for this. Areas, this is from the polling which you can either say choose to believe or choose not to believe, because I'm interested in the votes that have taken place. What do we know about the demographic effects of that? So here we go. This is according to the Financial Times. Areas with the highest number of degree-educated people tended to vote Remain. Areas where large numbers of people do not hold a passport tended to vote Leave. Areas with people on low incomes tended to vote Leave. Young people overwhelmingly voted Remain, but were outnumbered by older voters, and turnout basically increased with age. This means that the people most likely to be affected for the longest have something imposed on them against their will, and I'm going to come back to that. Scotland voted Remain. We know that for a fact. Every single one of its 30 councils voted Remain. It's 62-38. London voted Remain. It voted Remain 60-40. This is according to the Financial Times because London is more educated than the regions in terms of degree holding, and there is a link between holding degrees and voting Remain. This is not a value judgment. This is just something that the Financial Times have analysed. So I want to know, what does that tell us about the country now? What should we say to young people whose collective futures we have just decided? Chin up, don't worry. You should have been voting more. If you wanted to vote more, you'd have the outcome that you'd get. Do we actually accept the premise that going to university somehow influences what our vote ends up being? And does that mean the better educated you are, the more you are entitled to say we should Remain? Why is that? Is that likely? And being better educated in terms of going to university has nothing to do with intelligence. It's to do with life decisions. Is it, if we've travelled more, we're more likely to vote Remain? Because people in areas where there are low numbers of passports tended to vote Leave. Is there anything that connects those two things? And then, is Britain still bound by class distinctions? Because it's the higher income areas tended to vote Remain and the lower income areas tended to vote Leave. This is not saying everyone, I'm going to say this repeatedly, this is not saying everyone who voted Leave fit this description or everyone voted Remain fit that description. These are the overlying trends that can be pointed out. So I was interested to know how much of what was decided was based upon those environmental factors. And what do we say to young people today? An 18-year-old who wants to be European, are they being told they can't because the older generation doesn't like immigrants? That's an interesting question to me. What does this referendum say about what nation we are? How do we perceive ourselves? We've all seen the people on the news being interviewed saying, I want people out. I wanted to get rid of Muslims. That's why I voted. Is that a realistic assessment? Can we make any judgment about what sort of nation we are now because of the decision we've taken in regard to Brexit? Reports have come in. I've heard them. You heard one earlier in the hour of immigrants being targeted in the aftermath of the referendum, told to go home. Is that scaremongering? Or is that fact? If you are an immigrant or from an immigrant background, has the tone changed for you? Have you been subject to anything? Or is this just the same as it ever has been? We found some social media claims. I just saw 4 men yelling F off at the staff in a Polish shop. Daughter tells me someone wrote child's name go back to Romania on the wall in the girls' toilets at school today. It's all fun and memes until you walk up Great Portland Street and hear people chant make Britain white again. Someone else has tweeted older woman on the 134 bus gleefully telling a young Polish woman and her baby to get off and get packing. Horrific. Someone else, table next to me, says to a Polish waitress, how come you're so cheerful? You're going home. Him and the missus started laughing. Has Britain changed as a result of this referendum? Has Britain shown itself to be something other than you previously thought it was as a result of this referendum? Can we make any judgments about what Britain is? Is there any connection between Scotland and England anymore? Is there any connection between the young and the old anymore? 75% of the young, if you believe the polls, voted Remain. That's a vast, vast majority. Almost the same number over 65 voted Leave. What can we actually conclude about the status of our nation as a result of this referendum? Anything at all? And I say this not to make value judgments, just because it seems to be an interesting question. What motivates people to vote stay or leave? And what dominates the cultural tone of this nation? 0345 60 60 973, text 84850 or tweet at LBC. And to help me throughout this next hour is Sundar Katwala, the director of the British Future think tank. Afternoon to you, Sundar.
Good afternoon.
Is it possible to make judgments about the tone of the nation, the state of the nation, as a result of a decision like this, do you think?
Yeah, I think it tells us enormous amounts. I mean, the first big thing it tells us is 17 million versus 16 million, 52%, 48%, on possibly the biggest political decision we've probably made for half a century. The nation was very divided about the question on the ballot paper. And the question on the ballot paper was whether the European Union as an institution is still a thing that was good for our interests and our values as a country, as 48% of people thought on balance it still was, or whether it wasn't anymore if it had been previously, which the slim majority went to. So we're divided because democracy divides us in that way, and you dig into it and you get those social, cultural polarisations. And you're exactly right. Age, education and class go together. And that's a big thing of what happened in this campaign, actually, and why in the end Remain lost it, is on both sides. Most of the people making the case on both sides were people who had been to university and who were having arguments about facts and figures and statistics and the economy and what was good for Britain. And a lot of people listening to that who might have been worried about change and the economy and these big risks that we now take were thinking, well, I've been convinced that it's working out well for people like you who went to university, who do well in this country, might live in London and Manchester, who feel you've got a stake in it, but you're asking me to vote for more of the same. And I just want to say, those people are thinking, I don't want things to stay the same. They might not know what they were voting for. So that sense as well. And another big point about that is that if you are younger and you went to university, you're quite confident economically, you're quite confident about cultural change, but because you grew up with it. By the time you were 16, you had a classroom that was more diverse. Older people have seen their country change very fast in their lifetimes, and have, remember, what adults from Britain wasn't in the European Union. So for them, it's not so much of a leap in the dark as a return to something that was the case when they were young adults.
And it was also presumably a chance for people who felt that they weren't being listened to.
Absolutely.
To be listened to. Yeah. Because the great thing about a referendum is it's completely flat. Everyone's vote counts for the same amount, and everyone can get a chance. And there is an argument. But again, people can call in, and it's 03456060973. People call in, tell me what you think. I'm just reporting, there's a journalist called John Byrne-Murdoch who did this demographic analysis for the FT. These associations seem to be true. The areas which have the higher numbers of degree-educated people, the numbers of younger people tended to vote Remain. People who were older, who didn't go to university, tended to vote Leave. I'm just interested in, what does that tell us about Britain? And then what goes on from that is, does the national tone, Sunder, in your view, change as a result of this? Because what it could mean, and this could be a very positive thing, the people who we don't normally hear from because they are suppressed by the bubble, by the political classes, we start to hear from the whole country in a referendum, don't we?
I think, yeah, so people who didn't feel like they had a voice, in the last 5, 10, 15 years have felt that. People who felt very confident about their country now feel disempowered. If you live in London. I just want to add one nuance to this question, though, about the divides, because we very easily then start turning a big democratic disagreement into something that sounds almost like a culture war or a civil war in our country. When we say that London voted Remain as it did, 2.2 million Londoners voted Remain, it was 60-40. Yeah. And so 1.5 million Londoners, actually slightly more because of turnout than voted for the Mayor of London, have voted Leave. And if I go to my parents-in-law in Billericay, Essex, which is really, Leave heartlands, a third of people there, have voted Remain. So everyone made their own individual decision. There's almost not a place, if you're not in Gibraltar or the Catholic areas of Northern Ireland, there isn't probably a street in Britain where you'd have to knock on more than 4 doors to find voters on both sides. So this sort of sense that we sort of turn it into sort of Game of Thrones and the whole country, the Scots have voted to stay, but there are a lot of leavers in Scotland as well.
Yeah, is it a culture war? I think is a really interesting question, because the skewing, like you say, you can overstate that, but 75% of young people voting Remain, that is a significant number. I mean, that's more than 60-40, 55-45, 75%. Yep. Of young people. That's a big thing, isn't it? That's a big deal.
That big generational shift is there. I mean, although the turnouts there were very low, so the people who voted might feel very upset about it. The people who didn't vote might still feel indifferent about it, or they might start thinking, blimey, maybe that was more important than I thought.
Nadia is called from Essex, who's 18 years old. Hi, Nadia.
Hello.
Hi, what's your point?
Well, I unfortunately was unable to vote in the referendum because my 18th birthday was only the day after the referendum.
Oh, you poor thing.
I would have voted Remain. However, I am very, very politically aware. I am mixed race. I am Muslim. I'm Pakistani. I have a bit of Irish inside of me. And I'm just very conscious of the fact that how this will affect me. I go to an international secondary school. I didn't study A-levels. I studied the International Baccalaureate. And I'm planning to do politics and international relations next year at university. And so the kind of whole outcome of not being able to vote, however, being very, very British, being very proud of what I am, and the next day, on my birthday, having to deal with all the consequences of the pound dropping and Cameron resigning, it just all really got to me.
And how do you feel now? Because the question I'm asking is, do you feel any less proud of being British, any less part of being British as a result of this vote, or is it unaffected?
I just feel that it was quite an uninformed vote, and I think quite a lot of things came into play. When there was the election last year, the general election, I feel, quite a lot of the manifestos and so many of the campaigns weren't so much campaigns, they were fear-mongering. And along with this referendum, it wasn't so much campaigning as much as it was fear-mongering. And I just don't agree with that. That's just not right. And I think that, being British is such an unaware thing. I mean, like I said, I'm British, but I've got all these different backgrounds inside of me. And I just feel that maybe being British, there isn't really a clear thing, because as the UK, we don't have a constitution. However, the EU have a very clear constitution of what they stand for and why they're there. And I think what we need to remember is that the EU came about because Churchill wanted to make peace with the rest of Europe after the war.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a striking thing that Nadia's birthday was the day after the referendum, so she couldn't vote. So here's the question for you. We've got to go to the travel now, but here's the question for you to think of. Senator Katwala, the director of the British Future think tank, is on hand for the next hour, so he'll answer your questions on what this means for the nation, what we can look ahead to. I'm interested in the question. 75% of the ones polled show that the young tended to vote for Remain. That means a lot of older people voted Leave. The skewing, this is just analysis of demographic skewing, said that if you were an immigrant, you're more likely to vote Remain. If you went to university, you're more likely to vote Remain. If you are of a low income, you're more likely to vote Leave. And I'm interested in what that tells us about our unified nation. Are we a country of have and have-nots? And has this referendum reflected that? I'm not, just be absolutely clear for people misunderstanding that, saying that everyone who voted Leave isn't very clever. Going to university has got nothing to do with intelligence, but it is about life opportunities. And do you feel proud of where we are as a nation? People have been saying, we had a caller about 40 minutes ago saying, anti-immigrant rhetoric is now been normalised and is accepted. Do you think that Britain is now a less welcoming country as a result of this referendum? 03456060973. So without being hysterical, let's try and judge what this means about our country. Someone's just texted in, Leave voters aren't less intelligent, they're just least likely to benefit from remaining as they're on lower incomes. That may well be the point. Do we have a split country or not? 03456060973. I'm Stig Abell, this is LBC, it's 5:18. Stig Abell here this Sunday afternoon on LBC. We're debating national identity. We all know Brexit's happened, 52% have voted out. We are going to be leaving the European Union. I'm interested in your thoughts on what that says about our national identity. Do you feel different about Great Britain today? Scotland voted in, the rest of England and Wales voted out. London voted in contrast with anywhere else in England which voted out. The young, so as far as we can tell, voted in, and older people voted out. Is this an example of a culture war? And also, why is this an issue of nationalism? Senator Katwala, director of the British Future think tank, joins me. This was a debate simply about our economic attachment to a European Union, and yet it is being seen by some as an example of English nationalism raising its head. Why is that, do you think?
I think the European debate has always been about different things. Actually, it's been about a different thing for Britain than the rest of Europe. For the rest of Europe, it was a peace project arising out of the Second World War, and it was a political project about bringing the nations closer together. And the British didn't join that the first time they got the chance, and then decided to join the club for economic reasons, even though it was a political project. So we've always been reluctant Europeans. De Gaulle didn't let us in the first time because he said, "Not sure you'll fit in." We got in and we stayed semi-detached. We were in it, and we've never felt particularly European. I think it has a lot to do with being an island, which makes you quite insular sometimes. It also makes you very global. But we've engaged in Europe and we've engaged in the world. So only about 15% of people in Britain say that European is an identity that has meaning for them, and that's a lot lower. So there's Euroscepticism everywhere else in Europe. If you go to Holland or Sweden or Denmark, people tell you about the European Commission, but people never actually ask the question, are we really part of it or not? Britain on its island does ask that question. So there was this pound, shilling and pence sort of like, what will it cost you, what is it worth argument that people are obviously not convinced by. And then there's a sort of somewhat unspoken argument about what it says about identity. We know that people who felt more British than English, which would be Londoners and ethnic minorities, were much more likely to be in. People who felt as English as British or more English than British were more likely to be out. But then Wales has voted out as well. So it's not purely a question of English identity. So there is this debate about identity going on. But something that I think is very important wasn't on the ballot paper, even if some people think it was, is we weren't having a debate, is it 2016 or would you prefer to go back and live in 1974 before we joined the European Union. People who remember Britain before we joined the European Union might have voted out. But it's really important to protect that now. I was born in 1974. My parents are from India and Islands. It's good to have a caller who had a bit of Irish and a bit of Asia there. And the national identity of this country changed a lot in my lifetime, and it changed for the better, because questions like whether people like me could be British, they were around when I was 14. They weren't around by the time I was in my mid and late 20s. If some people think those questions are coming back, are black and Asian people just as British as the rest of you, then I hope they're going to be very disappointed. But I've got a lot of confidence in the rest of my country, not just in London. I've got confidence in all of the country that it's not. But 10% of people might think that. Never really wanted any of the Asians or black people here. Enoch was right and all the rest of it. If they feel legitimised, if they think 52% of people, 17 million people have voted for them, I want to have them put back in their box. Not by David Cameron or the Remain campaign. I want to have them put back in their box by Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and Gisela Stewart and people who led the Leave
by our
campaign.
fellow citizens. And that's what we need to hear from now to say. And that's what the question is. Do we feel proud of our country? Do we feel that nationalism, an ugly sign of nationalism, has been given the green light as a result of this referendum? That seems to me to be the question. 03456060973. Joe's on the line from Croydon. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Stig.
Yeah, what's your point?
I think that what it means to be British has changed over the years, and now more than ever, we've got an amalgamation of a lot of different personalities, a lot of people who have come here, who are immigrants, and who have made themselves a life here. So they consider themselves British. So I think that there are core concepts of what it means to be British, like democracy, a sense of fairness, and being kind, like queuing at the post office and things like that. But it is changing. But I think what this referendum has shown is that people are tired of a lot of things going on in the country. And when you've got a lot of immigration coming in, it also changes the demographic. I know that a lot of African people, or black people, a lot of Asian people also voted to leave. And it's not just the uneducated. I mean, I was educated at one of the best universities in the country. I voted to leave because there's a lot of different reasons why people voted to leave, and it's not because of racism, it's not because they're bigoted. It's because even those who second-generation immigrants, they see how much the country has changed, and it's too fast, it's too quick.
How's it changed? So are you saying that the country that the immigrants came to in the first place has changed because more immigrants have followed them?
More immigrants, and in a short space of time. I think it needed to be more regulated, and people need to kind of like assimilate more. This referendum is not saying that we hate Europe. No, it's the EU as an institution is very different. I've got European friends, but the EU as an institution that needed to change. So I think the media has played a lot on the differences, and that's not good, because I know of black people who have faced actually racist attacks, who were campaigning for the Leave campaign, and they were accused of being racist. I mean, I was accused of being racist, and I'm a black British. So it's not just, I think this referendum has just brought out a lot of a lot of hate, which just needs to be displaced.
Well, that's an interesting point, Joe. There's a lot of hate, and this question of whether people who've not been listened to before had a chance to bloody the nose of the establishment and took it, may be a question. I mean, I'm interested in, are you proud of being British today? Do you feel that racism has in any way been legitimised? Not saying that everyone who voted Leave are racist. I'll be very, very clear about that. It doesn't mean that. But people on the Leave side have some racists within it. And by winning, has that legitimised in their minds, not in reality, in their minds, that racism is somehow more acceptable? Now, do we think Britain is a less tolerant country as a result of Brexit or not? Adam's on the line from Sittingbourne. Hi, Adam.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, I couldn't be any more prouder on the day that we voted Brexit to be British for the first time since I was a young kid. I've not felt like that. When I was a young kid, we used to celebrate St George's Day. Then as years went by, no one ever bothered. It's not even a bank holiday. And I think what the nation has got sick of is that you're almost told when you're the youth are growing up is you can't be proud to be British because that's nationalistic, and you might be a racist if you're proud to be British because people who fly the English flag around, well, they don't like black people, so you can't be one of them. And that's the problem. And this is what the Remain side have constantly tried to do. Oh, of course there's going to be people with bigoted ideas and racist views. There's always going to be that. But, at the end of the day, what they've tried to do is group everybody in the same category to say, oh, look, they're racist because they want to be because they're proud and patriotic of their country.
Adam, I think that's a great point. So do you think there's an argument that people who want to be proud of being British have looked for a means of expressing that? And that this has become a way of saying, look, I'm not making a judgment about immigration, I'm making a judgment about Britishness. I'm using this as a forum to do it.
Yeah, and if we want to diffuse this culture war, and I definitely do, we've got to build this bridge between two different anxieties. One anxiety that says if we have a debate about national identity and patriotism and pride, will it feel unwelcoming? Will it start to feel exclusive? And other people who are saying, why aren't I allowed to be proud of my nation? Why am I allowed to be proud to be English and British? Or especially with English identity, obviously Scottish and Welsh identity are celebrating, British identity has been celebrated, and then people feel they're being told there's something about your identity that we're just a bit worried about where that will go. It's too big. And that feels to me wrong. And I'm proud to be English and British. What we need to say to people who feel that is, actually, of course you should have a right to a pride in your national identity. Let's celebrate St George's Day. Let's get the flags out for Roy Hodgson's team in the next game. And let's invite everyone to the party. And then we've actually said everyone can be proud to be English. And actually, if ethnic minorities aren't feeling they're not involved, why wouldn't they be? Those of us who are born in England, our parents perhaps didn't feel English, felt British, not English. Some of us feel English. I've been running a campaign on this, Stig. It's got a hashtag, We Are All England. And whichever side you are on in the referendum, whatever faith you're from, whatever your ethnicity, if you're supporting England, put a picture on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whichever it is of supporting England. We'll see the England we are. And, Remain didn't like to talk about English identity. They even had this pretty terrible phrase, I thought, Great Britain, not Little England. The only time they talked about England, they were criticising it. That must have put people's backs off. But, the 17 million and the 16 million, unless they're in Wales having their own very enjoyable time, most people who voted in this referendum will be supporting England against Iceland and France, because there are things we do together, even while we had a difference about the EU.
And the question is, and this is for everybody too, is that positive, inclusive view that Sundar Katwala has just outlined, is that the sentiment you take from this referendum? Do you come out of this referendum and say, yes, this is England uniting together? Or do you fear that the sort of nationalism that gets us a win in Brexit is the sort of nationalism that can turn ugly? Is that the problem that the nation is facing? That people can start a nationalistic programme with good intentions, but it swiftly turns ugly. 03456060973. We're debating how much we feel pride in Britain today. I'm Stig with LBC. It's news time. Good afternoon. I'm joined by Sundar Katwala for the next half an hour. He's the director of the British Future think tank, and we're just discussing with you what does it say about the nation, our decision to Brexit, bearing in mind what some of the demographic levers seem to be. So, if we look at it, the young tended to vote in and the old tended to vote out. People in areas of higher income tended to vote Remain more regularly than those who voted Leave. People with without a passport, tended to vote Leave. I'm just interested in the question how the demographic split breaks. And what do we feel our nation stands for? Do we feel our nation stands for something we can be very proud of, which may involve wanting to control immigration, but it's not racism, it's not a distrust of foreigners, it's a willingness, a desire to control our own destiny that can still remain inclusive? Or do you wake up today and fear that the tone of the nation has changed? That's what I'm mentioning here from you. 03456060973. This country is now in hock, for better or worse, to nationalism. English nationalism, Scottish nationalism is now been given the biggest fillip it could ever have, and then we have Irish nationalism, the chance for a united Ireland again. Is nationalism itself a bad thing? Or can it express itself in something more positive? Can we be proud today to be British because we decided to Brexit? Or are you waking up thinking something about my national identity has been damaged? I'm no longer part of a tolerant country because I voted, my fellow citizens voted to stand aloof. 03456060973. Before you take your calls on that, I just want to reflect on the political developments of the day, and there have been one or two with Anushka Asthana, the political editor at The Guardian. Afternoon, Anushka.
Hello.
A busy day for you, so I'll get right to the point. We've now had 9 shadow cabinet departures for Jeremy Corbyn. It started with Hilary Benn overnight, who was fired, but everyone else has resigned. In any other political system, in any other political party, it would be the end of the leader, and yet it may not be the end of the leader for Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn very determined not to go anywhere. He was voted with an overwhelming majority by the members. And it's actually nothing new to us that MPs here in Westminster aren't a big fan of his. I would say that a large majority of the PLP have long wanted him to go. And it is part of a divide in the party that he has talked about himself. He says it's a philosophical question. Is the party run by its members or its MPs? Well, the question he has to face now is, can a leader carry on if he doesn't have the support of his MPs? If he turns up to Parliament and he's sitting on those green benches and he hasn't got anybody around him who's willing to support him? I mean, you say there's 9 people. We've probably just had a statement from the most significant person of all, and that is Tom Watson, the deputy leader. He had to drag himself out of a tent in Glastonbury this morning.
I know.
Get his way back to London.
British politics is just embarrassing at the minute. I just love the fact that Tom, we had to wait to hear from the deputy leader of the opposition because he was waiting on a train to get him back from Glastonbury.
Well, you know, we've got to have a bit of fun. It's been a big EU referendum thing, hasn't it, you know, Stig? Everyone was trying to get away. They didn't realise the coup was coming.
And what's his statement? What's he said?
Well, what he said is he's kind of trying to have it both ways, really. I mean, he has said it's very sad to see so many talented, able and hard-working colleagues resign today, but deeply disappointed to see how Hilary Benn sacked. And he does say the nation needs an effective opposition. Now, one thing all of them are saying, including Tom, is this: it is very clear, because of Brexit, that we are now heading to a position where we might have a general election really, really soon. And the big fear among Labour MPs is, under Corbyn, will they keep their jobs? And that is what has led so many of them to step out today and take action.
And so, what's the? I know you can't predict the future, Anushka. You'd be too rich to work at The Guardian. But how can this play out? If Corbyn stays, and he could presumably just have to find people in the Parliamentary Labour Party to remain in his cabinet, is that something that's sustainable in the short to medium term, do you think?
Well, I think it is hugely destabilising what is going on, and that is the whole point of it. The likely thing is that somebody will challenge him to the leadership. We've already had Margaret Hodge and Anne Coffey put in a confidence motion, which will be voted on tomorrow night. The MPs will probably be able to hear the protests from Parliament Square as they do it, because Corbyn supporters are already cranking up, ready for action. So that'll all happen. Now, the question is, does Jeremy Corbyn need the nominations of 50 MPs to get back on the ballot paper, or does he automatically get back on because he's leader out already? And one thing that I think is quite interesting is there is legal advice floating around the Labour Party about this issue, and as I understand it, that legal advice suggests that he automatically gets a ticket back on there, in which case Jeremy Corbyn is going nowhere unless, and it is a big unless, the members have changed their mind. And the one thing that might have made them change their mind is that Labour members are massively pro-EU, so they'll be very, very upset about the referendum.
Anushka Asthana, thank you very much indeed. It's extraordinary political times we are living in. I'm interested in your view on the country, though. The country hasn't changed overnight, but do we have a better reflection of what that country is? And when you see a rise in nationalism, which we are unquestionably seeing, does that make you more or less proud to be British or English? Gary's on the line from Slough. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Stig. How are you doing? You all right?
Very good, thank you. What's your point?
Okay, well, I just want to say I voted Remain. My parents immigrated from India. I personally do feel like I identify as English, but throughout my life I felt like a significant proportion of my fellow Englishmen do not identify me as English. So I've always had this sense of that I don't really belong. I live in Slough, which is incredibly multicultural here. It's a great mix of people, but the changes have happened so quickly, and mainly due to like technological and economic advances. And this is happening faster than, I hate to say it, but faster than people are passing away. So in my lifetime, the youngsters have grown up accustomed to, the wider Europe, but the older generations haven't had time to adjust. And I think those issues made this Leave vote inevitable.
And how do you feel now? I mean, do you feel that as a sort of British Indian or a British of Indian descent originally, do you feel that you'll be more welcome, less welcome? Do you feel that the tone and the pitch of your life will change in any way?
I think we will always face the same challenges. This is always sort of. I think it won't really change. It will make some people a little bit, give them a reason, give them license to say what they really think. I just had somebody yesterday shout something through from their car. So I think it's given them this license in the short term. I don't think it will change anything necessarily.
You're very sanguine about that. You're very sanguine about that, guy. If someone just shouted something for you at a car, is that not? Are you able to take the longer view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame them because they may not know any different. You know, I grew up in a very multicultural society, in an area where there's so many different cultures, so I don't really see the difference. I've had to face this sort of thing throughout my life, so it's not something that's new to me. You have to kind of get on with it.
Isn't that hugely shameful for a country that you're a young man? I'm not talking about the 70s here. You're a young guy, and you've had to face that throughout your life.
It is shameful, but I'll tell you what, there's worse places than England. I mean, England, for me personally, has been very accommodating. I mean, I'm very grateful. I've had a great education. I live, for example, we live in a democratic society. We've been able to vote whether we're staying in the EU or not. And, I'm grateful for that. And I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. It's just, this is nature taking its place, I think. And I don't think it should take away from anybody being proud of being British either.
Gary, thank you. That was fascinating. Hugely considered and decent guy, Gary, there. Is there any connection between youth and tolerance and a view of the world in this referendum, do you think? I mean, when we're talking about young people voting Remain, is that because they're used to the idea of globalisation, used to the idea of change in a way? Well, I suppose if you're used to change, you'd vote Leave, wouldn't you?
There is a big association with generation and age and all of these issues of tolerance, and partly it's to do with factors of social class and so on, but a lot of it is just to do with the fact that what is normal to you when you're a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old is something you're very used to. So in my lifetime we've just become much less racist as a society across the generations, especially even though the times we live in the last decade have been more anxious times and we're having debates about immigration and Islam and so on. The overt racism that was acceptable when I was 15 isn't acceptable now. So if the people who, lost that argument in our society feel they've got a licence to do that because of this vote, then we need to revoke that licence very loudly and very clearly. And it's very important to me that black and Asian people felt they could vote on both sides of this referendum, because that's integration. We think they lent in more than out. Yeah. Partly, black and Asian people feel much more British than European, don't particularly think you should have an immigration policy that prefers Romanians and Poles by rules to people from Africa and Asia, but were put off for sure by Mr Farage's poster and some of the rhetoric, and so perhaps didn't quite feel as evenly there, but did then vote on both sides of the question, and that's integration. But the idea that the right to be British is now a threat. The people I think feel most anxious right now, 3 million Europeans in our country. Because do they feel we've rejected them personally, their countries and so on? And I just think we've got to say something very clearly to people who came here to live here. It's your home. You're welcome here. And I really do want to hear leavers say that.
And other people might say that, but they might feel the vote in such as the way the campaign was constructed, they feel repudiated.
There's a profound polarisation in this vote between the people who were sure before we had the referendum which side they're on. It's about 20% on that side and 20% on that side who felt very sure. People who listened to the arguments, came down one side or the other, who decided this referendum, they've got a lot more in common with each other. Yeah. Actually, they are a total cross-section of British society in a way that the sort of, Islington versus Hartlepool kind of stereotype of the vote, lots and lots of people weren't sure how to vote 3 weeks ago. If you watched it on telly. And we're all starting with the same country. This is the most important thing about national identity. National identity unites you when you vote for a different party and you're gutted or you're delighted the day after a general election. A referendum is even bigger than that. National identity has to be something that unites people, has space for people who'd prefer we stayed in Europe and people who are glad we've left it. And the 48%, if they can accept this result and not, go around signing petitions saying, can we have another go next week? If they can accept this result, 48% of people in our country, 16 million people, will have a massive stake in shaping how it comes about. The 52% still less the sort of most aggressive minority of street, racists who, we've all had enough of. The idea they get to decide everything that happens rather than we get to decide it together, whichever way we vote it. That's what a national identity, that's what about sharing an identity across political views is about.
That's Nick Catwile there. We will continue to take your calls for the last quarter of the show. I'll try and get as many as I can, but just to let you know, the resignations, we spent 5 minutes talking to a political editor. In that time, someone else has gone. Lord Falcon has resigned. He's now the 9th to go. He was Shadow Lord Chancellor and was seen leaving a Shadow Cabinet meeting on Friday, apparently not looking happy. Clearly he wasn't. That's 9 down in the Shadow Cabinet in 1 day. That's a story we'll be keeping with throughout the next few hours. But I'll get as many of you on as you can. Where do we feel post-Brexit about our nation? Are we proud or are we worried about the message it sends? 03456060973 is the number to call. I'm Stig Abell. It is now 5:48. 5 on his way in 9 minutes. But until that point, we're taking a temperature check on what we feel about our nation. Do we feel pride after Brexit, or do we feel concern that it may send a sign of intolerance? I'll try and get as many as we can for the next 9 minutes to get a representative view. Ben's on the line from Crowthorne. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
What's your point?
Well, basically, from what I've seen of the people that are Brexiters, and I was originally on the Remain side myself, I did in fact vote Brexit in the end. I'm 24, so I'm one of the young people that went against the grain of the other young people. My choice was based on the economic argument versus the idea of classical liberalism. So I've been studying a lot regarding the EU, and one thing that I found I was very unhappy with the idea of was the likes of Jean-Claude Juncker, who want to have a European army. And for me, I believe that the EU is great for trade. I think that was one thing it was great for. But the problem is we, as people, were not able to sort of vote against the more big government ideas, as it were.
So do you feel pride in Britain for effectively having an argument to regain our sovereignty?
Yeah, to a degree. I think the thing for me is I think there's a fine line between sort of overly nationalistic ideas and the idea of wanting to self-determine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've spoken to people who are a little bit racist, shall we say, and then I've spoken to other people who are just genuinely concerned in the sort of changes to our communities to the point where we sort of lose some of our identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. I see what you're saying. So Ben is sort of that reasonable, very reasonable, not about hatred of others, but trying to just regain a sense of control and power within our own nation. That seems to be a perfectly plausible reason to vote leave. Valentine's on the line from Bromley. Hi, Valentine.
Hello, good afternoon.
What's your point?
Yeah, well, I'd like to just share my experience, having seen this whole process develop into what it is now since David Cameron initially negotiated the terms. From the very offset, I always felt the argument and the questions posed were very xenophobic in the sense that, for instance, we would have many people mention how many immigrants or migrants, come here, but we would never sort of mention in specifics how many British people benefited from free movement and, were based in other EU countries. That always gave a sense of a one-sided argument, leading on to this, in my opinion, massive sentiment of empty nationalism, whereby people have almost become irrational in their sense to protect Great Britain. I mean, how great is Britain when our pound, is damaged, when the union is about to break up potentially? There are now petitions for London to separate from, the rest of England, and you think, you can't be terribly nationalistic if you want, if your vote, leads to what I would say is chaos, Armageddon, almost it just seems awful. That's all I can say.
Well, Walter, you've expressed that very clearly, which I think is the exact counter to what was said before, which is this notion that nationalism could lead to the end of the union and to a sense of xenophobia. That's the very opposite of the previous call. Inga's on the line from Kingston. Hi, Inga.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. What's your view?
Well, my view is I'm an EU national, and when I came here 10 years ago, I was coming to sort of like a part of EU, so sort of felt more like home. Whereas now, thinking that it's going to separate from EU, it feels more that might have to become a British citizen, and it's not really part of EU anymore. So I bought a property here, and I have my business, and just feels like what is going to be my role here now.
Do you
confused about my situation personally.
And do you feel less work? Could you become a British citizen?
Well, I don't know what.
Oh, I'm losing you, Inga. I think she put the phone away from her mouth. But there you go, an EU national who doesn't feel as part of society as much as she did before. Sundar Katwala, wrap this up for us, because on one hand, you can say that a Brexit vote was for a sort of nationalism, an English nationalism, really, which has its unattractive aspects, and we saw that in the campaign. It was an aspect which was very anti-immigrant. Does that mean that is what follows now, that this country is identified with and judged by a sense of nationalism, or can we gain something positive from that, do you think?
I don't believe that we'll be defined by xenophobia, because all societies need national identity. I think it's very important for us, but we get to shape them, and they can be inclusive or they can be exclusive, and this will be the most important year for decades in deciding what it means, and we'll have to talk about it more. Very struck by what Inga said as a European national here. She could stay and become British and should be very welcome. She's been here 10 years, so this is her home anyway. She's welcome anyway. She doesn't become British. She's got to have her rights guaranteed. And actually,
you say that, Sundar,
the Leave campaigners all said that actually during the thing, but the government was silent because they want to say everything's uncertain. I think it's 3 days after the referendum, the government shouldn't be being silent. They should be taking out advertisements in the newspapers to say to EU nationals, because we want the rights of Brits protected by Spain and France, but it's up to us what happens to EU nationals here. It would be reprehensible to change the rules in future and retrospectively apply that. We can change the rules in future, but the EU migrants here are welcome to stay. So Inga can become British if she wants, but she can stay here. She shouldn't be feeling anxiety. If our government had done its job properly, she wouldn't feel anxious about her right to be in this society. She might be anxious about the mood. And then we've actually got to the way we talk to people about this. So I think it's really important. But Ben had these very good points about feeling like a moderate leaver, and that's a big reminder. The alliances are different tomorrow than they were last week. You'll have the irreconcilable Remainers who just want to get back in, whether it's next year or 15 years. You'll have the pragmatic Remainers say, well, if that's what you choose, I'm upholding my values of tolerance. You'll have the pragmatic Leavers who will work with the pragmatic Remainers, and you'll have the toxic Leavers and the xenophobic Leavers. So I think if the people who are on the losing side voted the wrong way and are disappointed, can grieve the vote for a week or two, I think they've got to work with the pragmatists on the winning side and actually say Britain's still Britain. It's going to be a country that is welcoming and inclusive. We might control our immigration differently, but we'll engage with our European partners differently from outside the European Union. We'll drink cappuccinos in the cafes. Jose Mourinho will be kicking off the Champions League. If we get this right, there are big economic things to worry about. Our culture and identity shouldn't be thrown back into something where we're suspicious of each other, but we've got to do the work to make that happen.
Sundar Katwala there, and I think an emotional and convincing way to say our national identity can be strengthened if it's strengthened with tolerance. We believe in Great Britain. We've made a decision. Let's all make it work. Has to be the pragmatic call to everybody. and we'll see where that takes us. That's it for this week. Thank you for all your calls. I can't think of 3 hours that have passed with so many people calling in, so please do continue to do that. Don't forget you can listen to LBC whenever and wherever you want by downloading the LBC app, and if you missed any of today's show, there's the LBC podcast app. Coming up at 8, Steve Allen is in conversation with Warwick Davis and Ray Liotta. There's a combination for you, but next, here's Clive Bull.
Thank you very much, Stig. And yes, we continue the conversation. Later on, we'll be talking about this thorny question of whether there should be a second referendum, hearing the case for that. And first of all, we look at the plot to oust Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, a string of shadow cabinet resignations, piling the pressure on Mr Corbyn. Do you think he should make way for a new leader? Was his low-profile support of the EU a reason for him to quit? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. From LBC, I'm Clive Bull, and it all starts next.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.